Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. No one could see the future. Romance? Even more unreliable. And the cost of becoming an adventurer and gaining supernatural power was the thing she held dearest. After hesitating, Minami Rika finally made her decision. She took a deep breath to calm down, though her gaze was still evasive. She said seriously, Lord Shirakawa. I want to become a chosen one. Do I still have the chance? Just as I said earlier, gods are compassionate. For those who want to grow and become adventurers, I won't ignore their wishes. He hadn't expected Minami Rika to agree so readily. Well then. It looked like a new job class was just around the corner. He already had a good impression of her, and she fit the requirements of his god profession perfectly. Shirakawa gave a calm smile and nodded gently. Then have you truly made up your mind? To offer me everything, including your loyalty? Yes. With Shizuka Marikawa and Sakobu Jujima still in the house, Minami Rika's face felt like it was burning. It seemed her own bedroom was the only option. She slowly stood up, took off her black outer coat, and wearing only a tight-fitting tank top, Minami Rika revealed her flawless body to Shirakawa. Please. Please, Lord God, come with me. As for letting his little brother rest, Shirakawa had no such thought. After all, he had the max stamina, skill and was a god-sent beast of a man. He followed Minami Rika upstairs, to the largest bedroom on the 2nd floor. The lights were off, but with the moonlight pouring in through the windows, he could see her movements. She slowly pulled off her tank top. Her fair, flawless back showed signs of training. She didn't look back at him as she quietly removed her robe. She sat quietly at the edge of the bed. When Shirakawa picked her up, Minami Rika shut her eyes tightly and pleaded softly, Please. Be gentle. I've never done this before. Of course. Wanting to reduce her pain and help her grow stronger, Shirakawa wasn't worried about a cooked duck flying away. He decisively invoked divine authority and granted her the status of a chosen of the god of pleasure. Divine energy filled the room with a seductive aura, and their gazes grew hazy. Already influenced deep in her heart by the divinity, her lust magnified to the extreme. Lying on the bed, Minami Rika proactively wrapped her arms around Shirakawa. Just as they were about to begin, the bedroom door quietly opened. And the other girls, dressed in revealing bikinis, entered the room. Sakobu Jujima and Rei Miyamoto had no objections. The first to speak was Shizuka Marikawa, who sounded surprised. Rather than feeling like Minami Rika had taken Shirakawa, she indignantly grumbled, You actually thought about monopolizing Shirakawa-kun? That's way too selfish. Being called out like that by her close friend, Minami Rika didn't even dare to open her eyes. In the beginning, she clearly had a chance to become one of the chosen of pleasure. And yet now, she was the one who had willingly thrown herself at him. Just thinking about it filled her with shame. That's right. Lord Shirakawa's time is extremely valuable. What you did, Rika-san, is really too much. This time, it was Saya Takagi who spoke up. Especially after gaining the adventurer class with elemental magic, her feelings toward Shirakawa had become absolutely sincere. So strong that they surpassed all else. She sat at the edge of the bed. Though she wasn't making any particular move, the gazes from everyone in the room left Minami Rika utterly unsure of what to do. Gritting her teeth, she turned her passive state into action. Minami Rika. She took hold of her future with her own hands. This kind of scene didn't particularly faze Shirakawa. At most, it was just a rigorous test of his max stamina, skill. From the standpoint of a professional, there was still a lot of experience he hadn't passed on to the girls. Alright then, let me teach you what makes an adventurer special. Lord Shirakawa, I want to improve myself. Detected, Godhood profession chosen of pleasure, 10 people, this class cannot be upgraded, blank profession panel has been activated. Seeing the notification on his Goldfinger panel, Shirakawa suddenly felt a sense of accomplishment. All the labor day and night had finally paid off. though he didn't have any specific plans for the blank profession slot yet. One thing was clear. There was no limit to the chosen's potential. That meant there would be plenty more things for him to work hard on in the future. As the god of pleasure, starting a proper training session should be perfectly understandable, right? Chapter 67, Yukino shocked. Is this a superpower? For Shirakawa in his current state, this level of impact posed no threat to him at all. Even the enhanced girls who had become superhuman experienced comprehensive improvements in all aspects of their physical capabilities. But after several rounds of battle, they could only passively defend and were no longer able to resist effectively. By the time the battle ended and they returned to the real world, it was already early morning. Based on what Mira Yumiko had told him last night about the events at school, Shirakawa had no plans to continue skipping. Yukino had sought him out. As for heading to the Danmuki world, he only needed enough spare points. But the danger level had to be considered. The most critical issue was still the activation of the blank profession panel. Among the worlds currently available in the chat group, the options worth considering were still limited. Sakurajima Mai's world, for example, had a bit of fantasy in an otherwise normal daily setting. In Asuna's Sao game world, players likely had game-related professions, but the power-up potential wasn't very high. If he really wanted to pick a profession, then it had to be one with high growth potential, and ideally could break through via reputation points. He pondered carefully. The hero from Goblin Slayer's world. The timeline hasn't emerged yet. And there are no new worlds in the chat group for now. Kazuma. His most basic profession is adventurer. If I remember correctly, isn't that the class that can learn all skills? While brushing his teeth in the bathroom. Now with a rare moment of peace, Shirakawa found himself thinking about the blank profession slot and suddenly remembered the protagonist he replaced. Sato Kazuma. All of his base stats were low. Even his adventurer class was the lowest tier. The only real advantage he had was the ability to learn all types of class skills. Not even the proficiency panel could replicate that. His golden finger, the proficiency panel, was based on foundational job systems, allowing unconditional learning of skills within the same job. With that in mind, Shirakawa made up his mind completely. Then it's decided. I'll choose the adventurer class. When he stepped out of the bathroom, he saw Miro Yumiko still lying in bed browsing her phone, lazily unwilling to get up. The real reason was, of course, Shirakawa himself. Anyone who had flirted a bit knew. Sometimes just being around each other made you want to hold hands, then a hug, then a kiss. One thing led to another. Kissing led to cuddling, cuddling led to undressing. It was a chain reaction passed down through generations. Shirakawa was no exception. After exchanging a quick morning greeting with Izumi Mayo, who was busy in the kitchen, he smiled and said, "Good morning, Mrs. Izumi." "You too, Shirakawa-kun." She wasn't too fond of being called Mrs. But it was still better than Auntie. Carrying the prepared breakfast to the table. She didn't constantly watch over Shirakawa. But since she didn't need to make a lunchbox today and sometimes didn't even see him around, Mayo had a sense that he was clearly keeping busy with something these days. Still, seeing him in his Sobu high school uniform, Mayo smiled and asked, "Do you need me to prepare lunch for today?" "There's still time. But it's not necessary." He had already made lunch plans with Mira Yumiko at a restaurant near the school. Making a lunchbox now would be a bit too rushed. Shirakawa smiled and shook his head. Looking at the surprisingly rich and nutritious breakfast, he could tell Mayo had put a lot of effort into the meal. "I already made plans to eat out with a friend. No need to trouble you, Aunt Izumi." "No. You're the one taking care of me." Upon hearing this, Mayo quickly shook her head. Even as a home-based erotic manga artist, she wasn't that out of touch with reality. A typical rental in this area cost at least 80,000 yen per month. Now she only needed to spend 2 hours per week helping with light cleaning to cancel out rent entirely. Even the so-called help with lunch and dinner. It was more Shirakawa looking after her financially. Now, hearing him say she was the one being cared for, Mayo couldn't accept it. "If it weren't for you, Shirakawa-kun, I honestly don't know how I would have paid rent this month. I don't even know how to repay you. There'll be opportunities." Considering that Mira Yumiko was still in the bedroom, even if he had other ideas, Shirakawa wasn't about to say anything to Mayo right now. There were no limits to how many could be chosen by the god of pleasure. The more there were, the greater the enhancement to his attributes. Still, he didn't plan to go for quantity. Only those he was close with. And who were willing to offer complete loyalty. "If there's ever a way I can help you, Shirakawa-kun, I won't refuse under any circumstances." She didn't treat this as a joke. Mayo said it seriously. But the moment those words left her lips, her mind suddenly conjured scenes straight from an erotic manga. If he really did need something like that, would she say yes? She couldn't even meet Shirakawa's eyes now. After washing the frying pan she'd used, she escaped the house with a clumsy excuse. Hopefully. With the sound of the front door locking, Mira Yumeko, now fully dressed in her Sobu high school uniform, peeked out from the bedroom. Her expression was one of obvious curiosity. She had left early yesterday and hadn't realized someone else lived here. What just happened was too hard to ignore. What was that about? She's a tenant in this building. She works as an illustrator with an unstable income. I was too lazy to clean, so I asked her to help. In exchange for reduced rent. His relationship with Izumi Sagiri was still entirely innocent, so when explaining things to Miro Yumeko, Shirakawa was particularly confident and straightforward. He kept it simple. However, Miro Yumeko's gaze never left Shirakawa's face. Especially when she recalled the typical harem tropes from light novels, her expression turned a little strange. Shirakawa-kun. Don't tell me you're planning to start a harem? Of course. Facing Miro Yumeko. From any angle, their relationship couldn't be considered pure romance. To be precise, it was a bond formed through spiritual sensibilities. So, Shirakawa didn't bother to hide his thoughts at all. He shook his head with a smile. And besides, how could this be called a harem? I just want to bestow the title of chosen of pleasure on those I hold expectations for. Then why didn't you give that title to that on-san? Directly? Out of respect for her will. Now that his divine profession had broken through smoothly, Shirakawa didn't see the point in forcing someone to change their faith. That said, when he recalled the people who had become chosen of pleasure, Mira, the urban legend ghost, and Sakobu Jujima from the apocalypse world, most of them had already shared some physical intimacy with him beforehand. If there was an exception, it would be Darkness from the Konosuba world, who was a masochistic pervert knight. The progression of that relationship had been way too fast. Looking at Mira, Shirakawa asked, after becoming a chosen of pleasure, aside from the physical enhancements, what's the most noticeable change for you? Recalling how she felt last night, Miro Yumeko's brows knit slightly. Her tone was uncertain. It's like everything. All desires became magnified. Uncontrollably so. Yes, all kinds of desires. You know what I mean. She suddenly went quiet at this point. That was exactly how it had felt. But, as she gradually adapted to being a chosen of pleasure, those impulses began to fade. Besides, she wasn't particularly resistant to them to begin with. I see. Listening to her explanation in detail, Shirakawa's previously furrowed brows relaxed. It seemed to be a change brought by the divine nature of pleasure. The profession panel didn't provide detailed skill descriptions. Corruption? He was a proper god of pleasure. There was no way he'd do something like that. Putting that matter aside, Miro Yumeko glanced at Shirakawa, who had changed into the Sobuhai uniform, and asked with a strange look, why are you suddenly going to school today? Don't tell me. You want to see that Yukinoshita girl? That's part of it. But I also want to see whether, after becoming a priest, you can handle evil spirits on your own. As long as you're not in serious danger, I can leave the rest to you. Shirakawa spoke in a relaxed tone. The world was gradually becoming less like ordinary daily life. There might be threats besides evil spirits. So he needed to keep an eye on Mira Yumeko, to help her get used to being an adventurer. As for whether Maiko, Hana Yurikawa, or Izumi Mori would also become chosen, that needed to be nudged forward bit by bit. They had moved into the apartment. It was obvious this wasn't heading toward just a casual friendship. Alright. Even though his answer was a bit lacking, Miro Yumeko didn't care about the details. After becoming an adventurer, she did feel nervous about facing evil spirits alone. But, with Shirakawa at her side, she didn't feel that anxious. Though he was indeed a bit of a playboy, his attitude toward her had been solid. And as a god, he had plenty to take care of. Thinking it over, Mira Yumeko could understand it. She didn't want to become a burden to Shirakawa either. With a confident smile, she said seriously, I absolutely won't drag you down. Since they still had to attend regular classes, and since Miro Yumeko spent most of her time at Sobuhai, they chose the school as their testing ground. In a quiet corner. Especially after last night, the number of evil spirits in Sobuhai wasn't small. But very few students had spiritual sensibilities. So it wouldn't affect the school's operations. There was still plenty of time before classes started, and aside from the international class, few students passed through this building. Your profession's skill has a natural restraining effect on evil spirits. Shirakawa fully suppressed the diamond body ability of the exorcist profession, removing any natural intimidation toward the spirits. As a result, the wandering evil spirits began to focus on Shirakawa and Miro Yumeko, inching closer. The method to activate the skill was simple. Even someone like Mira Yumiko, who had never played MMOs, quickly got the hang of it. By channeling mana, she could activate it. Holy light baptism. It was her priest profession's core skill. As her mana drained, a gentle, holy light appeared in her palm, and as she focused it, she decisively fired it at the approaching spirit. It was a spell from another world. The evil spirit hadn't realized the seriousness of the situation, acting only on instinct to escape. But the moment it had chosen to approach, its fate had already been sealed. ZZ. The moment the holy light touched the ghost, the thick miasma surrounding its body sizzled into foul-smelling smoke. Then it was completely vaporized. Even Miro Yumiko, watching with wide eyes, hadn't expected these terrifying-looking spirits to be handled so easily. And after witnessing the death of their kin, the rest of the hostile spirits froze in fear and didn't dare come any closer. Seeing this, Shirakawa gave Mira Yumiko a silent thumbs up for her adaptability and said lightly, "You'll see for yourself. With your adventurer status now, taking down evil spirits is a breeze." Evil spirits. They were real. That fact alone was earth-shattering for Yukino Shitayukino. Even now, she couldn't forget what happened in the clubroom that day. The foul stench, the grotesque appearance. Those spirits had become a nightmare lodged deep in Yukino's heart. Thanks to Chitanda's help, she had managed to add Shirakawa online. She was hoping to apologize through chat. But doing it that way felt disrespectful. The Classic Literature Club seemed to have ceased all activity, and she didn't find Shirakawa there. So she went to Class 2F. But he wasn't there either. Is there really no other way? Every time she woke up, Yukino Shitayukino felt like something was hiding in the shadows of her home. Even on the way to Sobya High, she would occasionally glimpse black blurs, ghostly figures whose faces she couldn't make out. If what Shirakawa said that day in the clubroom was true, she probably had a weak spiritual sensibility. Trying to ignore the spirits and focus on her studies felt like a luxury, let alone running the service club. Just as she composed herself, ready to leave for school, she saw a small old-man-looking ghost in the corner of her apartment entrance. It was about the size of a doll, and when it saw her, it jumped in fright. It wasn't particularly strong, but Yukino, already in a foul mood, became even more irritable. This had become her daily routine for the past 2 days. Thankfully, she had a family car to take her to school, avoiding many of these incidents. What she was really curious about now was Miro Yumiko, who also had spiritual sensibilities. How did she deal with it? Judging by how confidently Mira had approached Shirakawa, her spiritual sense was probably far stronger than Yukino's. So, how exactly should I bring it up? Yukino Shitayukino had always been a bit difficult personality-wise. Carrying mixed emotions, she arrived at Sobya High, and it was still early before classes began. There weren't many students at the school. Only faculty members were cleaning fallen leaves off the ground. A casual glance toward a dimly lit corner would reveal curled-up ghosts. They weren't particularly aggressive. Should I really pretend not to see them? Is there no way to deal with this spiritual perception? Yukino Shita even found herself missing the quiet, peaceful life at her previous normal high school. That kind of daily life felt increasingly distant. She went up the stairs. Her destination, the second-year international class. But the figure of the blonde gal at the far end of the hallway looked very familiar. Miro Yumiko, with her blonde hair tied in a ponytail. Her pleated skirt wasn't as short as it used to be. Whatever had happened that made Miro Yumiko gradually change her old habits? Yukino Shitayukino wasn't particularly curious. However, when she spotted a ghost emanating a strong aura in the hallway and was just about to warn her, what she saw next would remain etched in her memory for life. In Miro Yumiko's hand glowed a gentle, sacred light. As if it was magic from a light novel. Facing a ghost radiating terror, she launched the gentle light at a speed too fast for the naked eye to follow. It hit the ghost directly. Yukino Shita could practically hear the ghost's shrieks. The holy and gentle light erased the ghost on the spot, leaving no trace behind. Was that an exorcism? The sudden scene left Yukino Shitayukino momentarily brain-dead. If she couldn't see ghosts herself, she would have thought this was just some video recording. She paused halfway up the stairs. Miro Yumiko, having dealt with the ghost, sounded rather excited. Shirakawa-kun, I think I can finally take care of these ghosts now. That familiar name made Yukino Shita's face freeze. Following the sound of footsteps, she looked up and saw Shirakawa, the very person she had been unable to find the day before. Their eyes met. He noticed her too. He didn't seem bothered by her presence. Shirakawa's tone was relaxed, even teasing. Yukino Shita-san, so you can see ghosts too now? Chapter 68, Yukino's Request. Hiratsuka Shizuka in black stockings would be stunning after seeing a ghost in the Classic Literature Club, Yukino Shita Yukino no longer regarded Shirakawa as just a high-achieving student. He understood the nature of ghosts and how to handle them. He had to be one of those exorcists that people talked about online. When asked, she didn't hide her thoughts. Her tone remained cool as always. I don't know why, but I can now see ghosts as well. She briefly explained her current condition. This flower of Sobuhai cast a glance filled with faint apology toward Shirakawa. She took the initiative. It was a misunderstanding during lunch the day before yesterday. Shirakawa-san, I apologize for my rash and thoughtless behavior. I hope you can forgive me. Also, watching Yukino's bashful manner, even though she didn't know what had happened after she left the classic literature club. From the conversation, Mira Yumiko could guess some details. Most people wouldn't believe in ghosts even if told. Let alone someone like Yukino Shida, who had a difficult personality and a sharp tongue. Since she had offended Shirakawa, even if he was a shameless flirt, she couldn't allow her other self to be disliked by someone annoying when not alone with him. Compared to the energetic girl persona she showed Shirakawa, Miro Yumiko now had a cold smile tugging at her lips. Do you think an apology is enough? If you didn't believe in ghosts, you should stick to that. Now you run to Shirakawa-kun the moment you're in trouble? You're hogging all the good things for yourself. Faced with such merciless criticism, Yukino Shita Yukino surprisingly said nothing. She simply looked toward Shirakawa. She remembered his conversation with Mira Yumiko. That it wouldn't be easy to solve the problem, and there would be a price to pay. Her tone was serious. I don't know what conditions Shirakawa-san needs to help me resolve this, but if it's money, name your price. As for Miro Yumiko's attitude, Shirakawa found it acceptable. He figured it probably stemmed from when he gave Yukino Shita temporary spiritual vision in the classic literature club. Maybe it activated something in her. She offered money in exchange for help. But he shook his head and spread his hands helplessly. There were 60 tenants in his apartment building. Even excluding Izumi Ori, there were still 59. The shop spaces alone brought in enough monthly rent that, even after taxes, left him with 8 million yen in net profit. Money was just numbers for him now. More importantly, Mira had only gained her ghost-fighting powers after becoming a chosen one. Helping Yukino Shita actually had no cost. The real issue was, why should he help her, and from what standpoint? Shirakawa firmly refused. This isn't about money. Miro Yumiko only has her abilities because all the conditions were met. I can't help you. And most importantly, I don't need the money. Conditions? Yukino Shita wasn't discouraged. She nodded and smiled slightly. Since Mira-san can do it, I believe I should be able to as well. What should I do? Surely it wasn't going to be offer your body, your soul, and your faith? That would solidify his identity as a perverted exorcist. Looking at Yukino Shita's persistence, Shirakawa shrugged and didn't give his answer right away. Instead, he asked, alright, let's assume you meet the conditions. But why should I help you? Yukino Shita didn't show any emotional reaction. She simply nodded, seemingly reflecting. The reason she started the service club was simple. Those who have should show compassion to those who lack. That's what we call volunteering. Just like developed countries offering aid, or people giving food to the homeless, or girls talking to unpopular guys. The service club was about helping people in need. She found it ironic that the more capable someone was, the more miserable they seemed. That's why she wanted to change everyone and the world. But when it happened to her, when she became the one needing help, she failed to show the proper humility. I'm sorry. My attitude earlier was presumptuous. Ever since I left the classic literature club 2 days ago, I've been able to see ghosts. And that continues even today. So I want to ask Shirakawa-san to please help me resolve this issue. Her attitude changed quickly. And Shirakawa didn't think he had done anything to deserve her usual venomous sarcasm. Her sincere request must have taken courage. For sure, I can help with this. Just wait until you're truly prepared, then message me online. If your offer is good enough, I'll consider it. His sharp senses picked up on approaching footsteps. Shirakawa had no intention of staying longer and left with Mira Yumiko. Meanwhile, Yukino Shita Yukino quietly stood in place, pondering Shirakawa's words. What did he mean by true preparedness? She didn't understand. But the good news for now was that her situation with seeing ghosts might be turning around. She just didn't get what exactly did Shirakawa want? How should I even put this? I've really held it in long enough when it comes to Yukino Shita. As the top of the social chain at Sobuhai, Miro Yumiko vented her frustration with satisfaction, especially after realizing she had misunderstood Shirakawa. She just couldn't hold it back. However, seeing Shirakawa's calm expression made her a little uneasy. she asked. What I did just now won't mess up your plans, right? No plans. On the way back to the school building, with no other students in sight, Shirakawa was just about to wrap his arm around Miro Yumiko's waist when she suddenly quickened her pace. By coincidence, his hand landed on her butt. With his enhanced physical senses as a transcendent, he clearly felt the soft elasticity unique to a girl. As the sensation jolted through her body like electricity, Miro Yumiko's face instantly flushed red. She glanced at him with playful reproach, then looked around briefly. After making sure no students were around, she gently tapped Shirakawa's hand and narrowed her eyes in suspicion. What are you trying to do? You know. He pointed toward the distant restroom. As a god of pleasure, how could Shirakawa not have wild ideas in a school setting? There was still plenty of time. 30 minutes. Plenty for a quick encounter. You've lost your mind. Miro Yumiko blushed and glared at Shirakawa. But as one of the chosen of the god of pleasure, the thrilling sensations ignited something in her. What if we get caught by other students? Then we stop. Like you'd really stop if I said no? Fine. The girls' restroom. That place doesn't get much crowded. As she made the suggestion herself, she felt like she was going crazy. But the temptation was too much to resist. After making sure there were no cameras and that the restroom was empty, she took Shirakawa's hand herself. There's still over 30 minutes. You know what, do as you please. If we're late, then we're late. Consider it covered. Because the restroom wasn't frequently used by students and was regularly cleaned by staff, the stalls were dry and didn't smell. Though the space was a bit cramped. Shirakawa infused his magic into his senses and scanned the entire restroom in an instant. After confirming there were no suspicious objects. Who says you need twin tails for handlebars? A single ponytail works just as well. After all, the strong don't complain about their environment. As the perennial top student of the second year at Sobya High, Shirakawa's mastery of academic contents gave him a clear edge in helping Miro Yumiko, who was average in her studies. He was especially helpful with Japanese, English, and physical education. Since becoming a transcendent, his tutoring efficiency had greatly improved. Almost every concept he taught, Miro Yumiko could quickly grasp. And give feedback too. But the sheer amount of knowledge wore her out physically. She could finally understand how Shirakawa held the top spot. His study methods were clearly beyond normal comprehension. Having never been a particularly strong student, Miro Yumiko had no intention of secretly trying to compete. When she heard footsteps approaching, to avoid seeming like a tryhard, she quickly covered her mouth to avoid being misunderstood by the other girls. Meanwhile, Shirakawa continued tutoring her enthusiastically. Still full of energy. Miro Yumiko could only protest silently with her eyes, desperately holding back any sound. The other girls were just here to check themselves in the mirror. Probably good friends. I haven't seen Shirakawa-senpai around lately. I even wrote a love letter but didn't get the chance to give it to him. Shirakawa-senpai's grades are just as stable as ever. Even Yuki Noshita-senpai couldn't shake his position. Whether it's academics or sports, I think someone that perfect definitely has a girlfriend, right? Even from several meters away, Miro Yumiko could clearly hear the girls praising Shirakawa. She turned her head to look at him as he continued tutoring her. He really was that good in every aspect. Girls were even writing him love letters. Just knowing that made her feel happier. Having the popular Shirakawa personally tutoring her gave her a strange sense of accomplishment. But Shirakawa, also hearing the compliments, sped up his tutoring as if to prove a point. So much that Miro Yumiko could barely keep up. Learning is what matters most. Being late was inevitable, but Miro Yumiko, now freshly charged with knowledge, calmly faced even the homeroom teacher, Hiratsuka Shizuka. With a composed look, she said apologetically, "Sorry, Hiratsuka-sensei. I missed the train this morning, so I'm about 20 minutes late." "No problem." Hiratsuka was generally understanding about student tardiness. Especially when it was due to something like a missed train. Seeing the sweat sticking Miro Yumiko's hair to her cheek, she could guess it was from rushing to school. She gently waved it off and said, "Even as a high school student, you should still be careful getting to school." "Thank you, teacher." Having no hesitation about selling someone out, Miro Yumiko sat down by the window at the back of the classroom. She glanced at Shirakawa, who was now being stopped by Hiratsuka. Giving him a helpless look. As if saying, "You brought this on yourself for not treating me like a human being." "And you?" Hiratsuka's face was calm, but her fists were clenched. She couldn't believe Shirakawa had tricked her. In exchange for her approval, he was supposed to share the club room between Yuki Noshita and the Classics Club. But instead, he just passed the club president title to Chikenda. Clearly, he never intended to show up to the club at all. Still, Recalling Yuki Noshita's difficult personality, Hiratsuka released her clenched fist and casually lit a cigarette. Not going to explain? I was tutoring a classmate late last night and overslept this morning. That's why I was late. And honestly, if I didn't want to come to school, I could have just asked for leave, right? It was true. He had been tutoring Mirayumeko the night before and again this morning. Facing Hiratsuka's gaze, Shirakawa answered sincerely. Looking at her now. Wearing a white outer coat and a stylish black and white suit underneath, her looks and figure were both top tier. But perhaps due to poor sleep, she had light dark circles under her eyes, and a faint aura of resentment surrounded her. A spirit. Considering the world was slowly shifting in that direction, it wouldn't be surprising. I'm not talking about that. Sensing he was trying to dodge, Hiratsuka shook her head in exasperation. His difficult personality was almost on par with Haruno's. Without asking for his permission. Come with me to the office. All right. It was the same familiar office. The other teachers still had a good impression of Shirakawa. His requests for leave didn't make him seem arrogant at all. Just because your grades are good doesn't mean you can slack off. In the break room, Hiratsuka Shizuka sat on the couch with her legs crossed, puffing on a cigarette in an attempt to relieve her exhaustion. She didn't care at all about appearances. Sitting across from her. Although nothing risque happened, the slightly tired Shizuka at this moment was undeniably alluring. She wore low black heels, and her legs were flawless. Under the room's lighting, her fair skin looked even more refined. From the perspective of a rebellious student confronting his teacher. If Hiratsuka-sensei ever wore black stockings, it'd definitely be worth worshipping. Compared to lewd fantasies, Shirakawa was more curious about what had actually happened to her. He could still sense a trace of lingering resentment in her. Sensei, did you not sleep well? Don't think pretending to care will get you out of this. Massaging her temples, Shizuka sighed and didn't hide anything from Shirakawa. It probably wasn't because of drinking. Just had a weird dream. Seeing that Shirakawa looked like he was genuinely listening, Shizuka didn't bother hiding anything and continued after thinking for a bit. It was the day before yesterday. I went out drinking with Haruno, an alumna from Sobya High. On the way back home, we ran into a stray dog. I happened to have some food in hand. And you gave it to the dog? He could already guess where this was going. Shirakawa frowned slightly. Yeah. I'm way too busy to keep a dog. It kept following me, but I ignored it and went home. And then the nightmares started. She didn't think too deeply about it. Nightmares could come from stress, and with how intense her job was, it made sense she'd dream of that stray dog. She stubbed out her cigarette. Anyway, that's about it. You said you didn't sleep well either. Want a can of black coffee? Still her usual pushy self. A can of coffee was pushed in front of him. Shirakawa didn't even have time to thank her. Because what she said had caught his attention. Something felt oddly familiar. Feeding a stray dog out of kindness, only to be haunted by nightmares. That sounded exactly like an urban legend. And sure enough, the image of a human-faced dog flashed through his mind. Shirakawa couldn't help but twitch at the thought. Could it really be that kind of coincidence? Chapter 69, Fierce Battle with the Human-Faced Dog, Round 2 begins. Stop changing the subject. Explain properly why you suddenly gave up your position as Classics Literature Club president. Especially right after I approved your leave. There it was. The unavoidable issue. Shirakawa had already prepared an answer. Facing Shizuka's suspicion, he spoke casually. The main reason is because I'll be taking a long leave of absence. If I'm still president, it'll be hard to keep the club running smoothly. So I figured it'd be best to resign. A clean and logical explanation. So flawless that Shizuka couldn't find a single flaw. Watching Shirakawa's calm expression, she even started to feel a familiar pressure. Like Haruno Yukino-shita's. The reason she wanted Yukino to share a clubroom with the Classics Club was to have her interact with Shirakawa, hoping it'd help her develop a better personality. She didn't expect Shirakawa to pull the rug out from under her. Fine. If there's nothing else, just go. Looking at you gives me a headache. Shizuka waved him off, defeated. Dealing with Haruno was already a pain. And now her most promising student turned out the same. Her sleep had been awful lately. She kept dreaming about a dog that seemed to have a human face, and her condition was steadily worsening. She grabbed the black coffee on the desk and chugged a mouthful. What the hell is up with that weird dream? But Shizuka didn't realize Shirakawa was already long gone. Without so much as a goodbye, he'd left Sobuhai and taken the train back home. If I remember right, the human-faced dog doesn't have a specific area where it appears. The clues are way too vague. If that's the case, I might have to ask Hangako for help. In the original plot, Hangako was the one who tied all the urban legends together. Even Kuchise Kanna approached Shirakawa because of her. As another urban legend, Hangako should know how to contact the human-faced dog. That'd save him a lot of time and effort. But thinking about how he'd have to perform an exorcism made Shirakawa feel very weird. While the human-faced dog did take a female form. If he remembered correctly, some parts of the body were still canine. If he had to use his forced exorcist methods, wouldn't that mean he'd literally slept with a dog? Not metaphorically. Physically. Forget it for now. Best case, I'll just convince her to leave Shizuka alone. If she's reasonable and loyal, maybe she could become one of the chosen of pleasure? He didn't dwell on it much. As the train pulled into the station, Shirakawa returned to his apartment. Now that Hangako and Kuchise Kanna had been fully purified, they were quite close with him. When he opened the door with his key, he found them all playing cards together. The most innocent-minded of them, Mary, had her face plastered with sticky notes. And that wasn't the only thing at stake. It was obvious from the scattered clothing that they'd bet their clothes too. Mary's exposed midriff revealed her distinctive dark purple butterfly mark. The first to notice him was Mary, who had lost everything. Her body was covered only by band-aids and paper slips. Lord Shirakawa. They're bullying me because I don't know how to play cards. Hangako and Kuchise Kanna both smiled awkwardly and greeted him too, but before they could say anything, Mary immediately cut in. Lord Shirakawa, did you come to purify me? No, not really. I actually came to talk to Hangako. He had no plans for intimacy right now. His focus was on the last urban legend in the current arc. Shirakawa thought it was necessary to find her. At the very least, to make sure she wouldn't pose a threat to the people around him. Although he was still just a high school student, and Shizuka was his homeroom teacher, maybe after graduation there'd be a chance to turn teacher and student into something else. Without explaining everything, Shirakawa asked directly, Hangako-chan, do you know the human-faced dog? I do. She used to be a friend of mine. Not particularly evil or anything. Did she do something bad to you? Hearing that it involved a friend, Hangako instantly tensed up. If her friend had done something wrong to Shirakawa, she knew the consequences could be severe. You could say that. Her actions are causing a lot of trouble for my teacher. Now that he could contact her, things would be simple from here. Shirakawa chuckled and shook his head. In the original work, the human-faced dog wasn't exactly known for intelligence. He said casually, Hangako, could you get in touch with her for me? If she can come directly to the apartment, that'd be best. I have something to handle. Okay, Lord Shirakawa. Hangako didn't refuse. After all, this was a task from her god or master. Without hesitation, she used a special method of spiritual communication to summon her to this very apartment. She even boldly guessed. Could it be that Lord Shirakawa wanted to help purify the human-faced dog's lingering resentment? That would be great. Helping to dispel her inner grudge might even let her live here too. Then she could see her friend every day, and they'd have way more fun together. With that thought, Hangako said, I've sent the message. If the human-faced dog receives it, she should be here soon. Woof woof woof. Is this Hangako's place? Before Hangako even finished speaking, a mature-sounding voice rang out from outside the door. Without any intention of knocking. She didn't barge in exactly. Hangako walked over and opened the door herself. A wave of strong resentment followed. And standing there was a small dog with deep blue fur. Hangako. It's been so long. The moment she saw her friend Hangako, the human-faced dog transformed from a canine into a human form. She was clearly half a head taller than Hangako. With short deep blue hair and fluffy ears, a pretty, mature-looking face, and wild golden eyes. When she smiled, a small canine fang peeked from the corner of her lips. But she had no concept of wearing clothes. Her flawless figure was completely exposed before Shirakawa. A red collar hung around her neck. Her arms and legs still had features of a dog demon. Seeing her familiar friend again, the human-faced dog wagged her tail energetically, clearly in a very good mood. However, as soon as she caught the scent of a human in the room, her expression immediately turned wary. She walked into the living room and spotted Shirakawa standing next to Mary and Kuchise Kanna. Who's that? I smell human on him. Did you invite me here just to feed me? If so, thanks in advance, Hangako. It was awkward. Hangako hesitated, then asked, have you done anything bad recently? Bad things? The human-faced dog poked her cheek with a finger, thinking. Then she beamed. Actually, yeah. Just 2 nights ago. I met a kind lady. She gave me a bunch of food. I thought I'd found someone who'd feed me long term, but she didn't try to take me home. So I went to visit her in her dreams. That explained things. The canine part of her still had that loyal nature. Hiratsuka Shizuka had fed her out of kindness, and she misunderstood it as a sign of being taken in. The gap between expectations and reality. So she haunted Hiratsuka with nightmares. Shirakawa's face stayed calm. He finally spoke seriously, "So you've just been tormenting her with nightmares?" "No. I was just trying to remind her to take me home." She hadn't realized the gravity of her actions and answered without thinking. But then she caught herself and became alert. Looking at Hangako, confused. She suddenly flared with dark energy and snapped, "Who are you? Are you the one who forced Hangako to summon me here?" She didn't give Hangako a chance to explain. The human-faced dog sniffed around the room, and quickly noticed something. Not just Kachise-kanna. Even Mary. None of them had any resentment left. That left only one possibility: this weird human had already purified them. "I don't know who you are. But you're the one who made Hangako, Kachise-kanna, and Mary like this. Your plan won't succeed with me. I'm a righteous exorcist, not a villain." Shirakawa shook his head. The human-faced dog was a dog demon, quite different from the urban legend spirits. She had solid melee abilities. However, that might work against ordinary people, but compared to Shirakawa, who stood at the peak of the daily life world's power scale, her aura was weak. He didn't even give her a chance to attack. Kachise-kanna and Mary immediately appeared beside her. Despite having been purified, their spiritual strength hadn't dropped at all. They restricted the human-faced dog's movements on the spot. "Mary. Kachise, I'm trying to save you. What are you doing?" She struggled helplessly as her movements were locked down, eyes flashing with panic. She tried using her resentment to awaken their original selves. But it was useless. All she could do was watch as Shirakawa slowly approached. Fear took root in her heart, and she couldn't resist. Hangako stood beside him, her voice filled with a bit of pleading. "Lord Shirakawa. She hasn't hurt anyone. She's just a dog demon twisted by resentment. Please purify her." "An exorcist? So that's it. You're the one who made Hangako act weird." Now fully convinced, the human-faced dog's eyes flared with fighting spirit. If it weren't for Kachise and Mary holding her down, she would have lunged. "You'll never get the chance to purify me." Gaining a new ally didn't bother Kachise and Mary. Originally, they had only immobilized her limbs. But knowing this could help a friend find peace, they increased their hold, pressing her to the floor. This time, it was a proper purification ritual. There were no weird intentions. From above, her body really was stunning. Her fur was soft, and the red collar around her neck confirmed her identity. With things already going this far, the cute human-faced dog, if he didn't carry out this justice, wouldn't it be a betrayal of his identity as a forced exorcist? Even with other urban legends around. First of all, I must state clearly, I am a proper exorcist, not some perverted furry. Second, Shirakawa said sternly. He swiftly pulled out the X-curry stick, and targeted the weakest part of her defenses. With her movement restricted, it was easy. The holy sword pierced through her spiritual defenses. The divine energy it carried naturally suppressed all urban legends. She couldn't resist. She felt the grudge inside her burn away. Her senses overwhelmed, her eyes rolled back, and she completely lost control. "You! What the hell are you doing? Take your dick out now." Even without Kachise and Mary holding her, she had no strength left. Shirakawa shook his head, saying calmly, "My exorcism method is a bit special. So please bear with it for now." Bathed in holy light, she was overtaken by a ripping sensation. All her strength vanished. She could only submit. But for Shirakawa, the righteous exorcist, even the sins lying in front of her chest had to be judged by justice. "This'll break her, won't it?" Standing by as she watched, Mary had never witnessed such a powerful exorcism before. If such immense energy was unleashed, her own puppet body would definitely fall apart. Now fully transformed into Shirakawa's shape, the slit-mouthed woman had hearts in her eyes. She too wanted to be exorcised as roughly. She's still not fully purified. Holy light constantly bathed the human-faced dog, but seeing the adult woman still resisting, Shirakawa could only feel, the more resistance, the stronger the urge to conquer. As the god of pleasure, if he couldn't even handle a basic urban legend, that would be embarrassing. What made it trickier was that she was a dog yokai. In all aspects, her physical capabilities were much stronger than a regular adventurer, and her physiology was slightly different from humans, providing a strangely tight sensation. Continuous output of holy light broke through her last defenses. Weakly, she kept begging for purification. Not just the resentment in her body. Even her spirit was on the verge of collapse. Staring into Shirakawa's righteous expression, the human-faced dog finally submitted. Weakly pleading, she said, Please. Please. Stop. I promise I'll never bother that woman again. If you keep exorcising me, my mind will fall apart. All evil must be judged. It only took less than 10% of Shirakawa's energy to completely purge the remaining grudge inside her. He hadn't held back during the fight. Now. It was time to show some real skill. Evil. Be gone. He poured pure holy light into her without restraint. Her earlier hostility was gone, and her consciousness began to fade. The crazed smile on her face was the joy of rebirth after her inner grudge had been cleared. The human-faced dog even began to believe that she no longer needed to cling to her identity as a yokai. I'm falling apart. What a powerful exorcist. No wonder Hangaku lost and was purified by you. I feel like my whole body's been scrambled. She spoke weakly. As the last bit of grudge inside her vanished, the time was just right. Shirakawa withdrew his dick that had pushed her to her limits. Holy light overflowed from her body. It's about time. Judging her current state, this was the perfect moment to make her a chosen. Shirakawa activated the Divine Mark skill. A soft pink light shone from his palm. Without hesitation, he placed his hand on the human-faced dog's abdomen. With a brief surge of divine energy, the pink glow filled the entire living room. As existing chosen of pleasure Hangako and Kuchai's Akana felt the heat radiating from the divine mark on their abdomens, they knew. It was time to pledge their loyalty again. System notification, current chosen of pleasure, 11. Overall attribute increase, 110%, check panel for details, finally done. Looking at the dark purple tattoo engraved onto the human-faced dog's body, Shirakawa gave a sigh of satisfaction. But just as he was about to get up, he met the expectant gazes of Hangako, Mary and Kuchai's Akana looks like. The battle wasn't over just yet. Chapter 70, The Human-Faced Dog, I'm the Real Dog. A new chat group member so comfy. So satisfying. Truly, loyal dogs are the best companions. The human-faced dog was no exception. Wearing the clothes Hangako had bought her, she sat obediently on the floor. She looked completely wrecked. Because she was squatting on the ground, a slow trickle of cum kept leaking from her pussy. She even playfully scooped up a bit of cum and put it in her mouth to taste it. Her exhausted eyes sparkled. It tasted surprisingly good. I've figured out what's going on. Shirakawa said. You just wanted someone to take you in. But since my teacher rejected you, you kept clinging to her. I get how you felt, but your methods. Watching the CG of all the defeated urban legends play on loop, Shirakawa turned his gaze to the human-faced dog, speaking more gently now. Now that she had become a chosen of pleasure, he had basically completed his collection of all urban legend defeat CGs. It felt pretty satisfying. Hearing his words, the human-faced dog seemed to understand. Her golden eyes filled with disappointment. She had hoped to be taken in by Hiratsuka Shizuka, even going as far as to prepare her own color. But now, she knew. If she kept pestering Shizuka, Shirakawa would not hesitate to kill her. So where could she go? Thank you. For the clothes, Hangako. She slowly got up from the floor and looked at Hangako, who was completely worn out. Staring down at her outfit, she spoke sincerely. But just as she was about to leave, she heard Shirakawa's calm voice, but if you really don't have anywhere to go, you can stay at my place. Just help out a little. Like guarding the apartment. After all, she was a chosen now. He couldn't exactly leave her to wander the streets. It was totally fine to place her in the two-bedroom unit shared by Mary and a slit-mouthed woman. Hangaku liked living in the bathroom because of her ghostly habits. Mary dreamed of being Shirakawa's portable fuck doll. Kuchai's Akana lived in the master bedroom. So, the extra room was perfect for the human-faced dog. Oh really? She froze mid-step and looked back at him, her face full of disbelief. She hadn't expected to be taken in at all. But when she saw his calm nod, the joy inside her completely overflowed. Thank you, Lord Shirakawa. I promise I'll guard your home with my life. Good. With that, the apartment's security was even more solid. Now with 4 urban legend level beings stationed, there was no way evil spirits could bother them. Shirakawa smiled as he looked at her grateful expression. But the human-faced dog, knowing there was still some lingering grudge inside her, made a decision. She took her future into her own hands. Master, please fuck me again. I want to be purer. Shirakawa gently rubbed her furry dog ears. As a divine envoy of pleasure, her request for further purification wasn't something he'd reject. Just to be clear. Before picking up the dick, he warned her, I need to make this clear. I'm a proper exorcist. What I'm doing is righteous exorcism. Yes, master. Every time Shirakawa exorcised her, she underwent real change. And once it was over, she looked at him with growing curiosity. Master, how did you know I was looking for that woman? Because she's my teacher. Even if she wasn't that smart, the human-faced dog could sense something unusual about the situation. Especially after experiencing such overwhelming pleasure. Master, do you like her? Whether or not it was appropriate given the teacher-student dynamic, Shirakawa couldn't really deny he had some feelings. Especially for someone as fierce as Hiratsuka Shizuka. Given her personality, pressuring her too hard might backfire. Forcing Hiratsuka Shizuka to awaken spiritual awareness and then pledge her loyalty. The chances of that working were slim. The same applied to Yukino Shida. All he could do was present the choice. It was ultimately theirs to make. Let it happen naturally. Shirakawa gently shook his head. With the way the world was evolving, anyone who had encountered evil spirits or urban legends had a high chance of awakening spiritual awareness. The Classics Literature Club frequently discussed supernatural and ghostly phenomena. As their advisor, Hiratsuka Shizuka was well aware of this. If she truly encountered trouble, she'd come find him herself. I've got things to do. Remember to clean up. Yes, Master. Catching the subtle change in Shirakawa's gaze, the human-faced dog felt this was her chance to shine. Her eyes lit up with excitement. She had a general understanding of Shirakawa's current identities, a god, a strange exorcist, and a student. Since the issue was Hiratsuka Shizuka being disturbed by a dream, she figured she could bind the spirit into the dream, prompting Hiratsuka to seek Shirakawa's help in purifying it. Watching Shirakawa's retreating figure, her excitement grew. I can't be too aggressive, and I absolutely can't harm her. But if she finds out Master is an exorcist, things should develop smoothly, right? It's decided. Besides this, I haven't had a chance to repay Master for taking me in. As a somewhat cunning dog spirit, the human-faced dog glanced at the girls slumped on the sofa. Urban legends Shirakawa had taken in. Competing for favor? She grinned. When it came to being a dog, no one could beat her. Loyalty was her strongest trait. Being an exorcist doesn't really stand out in terms of combat strength anymore. Better to allocate reputation points to the adventurer class. Time to head back home. Having settled things with the human-faced dog, Shirakawa had no intention of lingering at Hangako's place. He planned to return home, clean up, and change clothes. As for the progression in the Konosuba world, the campaign against the Demon King's general could wait. He still needed a staff tailored, and that could be left to Aqua. Just needed to pay her later. Next stop. The Danmaki world. The tricky part will be obtaining a divine identity and creating a familia. Shirakawa had a decent grasp of the Danmaki world. If he entered Aurario as a foreign god, every other deity aware of otherworldly beings would go nuts. Even if the gods, having sealed away their powers, didn't intervene directly, their familia surely would. Troublesome? Not really. The rules that bound gods in Danmaki wouldn't be much of a problem for him, especially as a shameless outsider god. If it came down to it, he could just leave a teleport anchor in that world and return at any time. Easy. While waiting for the elevator, Shirakawa was thinking about his next steps. But when the doors opened, a figure in a black school uniform appeared. The uniform looked very familiar. Toei Agasaki Academy's. Long, silky black hair draped over her shoulders, with a white hairband. She wore sheer black tights that outlined her legs perfectly. Honestly, in terms of looks, she might have been twice as attractive as Yukino Shida. Not to mention her voluptuous, mature figure. Kasumijoka Utaha. Seeing her face clearly left Shirakawa briefly stunned. He never expected to bump into her in his own apartment building. If she was here, did that mean Ariri and Megami were also in this increasingly chaotic crossover world? Shirakawa quickly shifted his gaze to the elevator panel. 14th floor. That was the floor Mrs. Azumi Mayo lived on. Floors above 10 weren't rented out publicly. As a light novel author, she naturally needed to meet with illustrators. Are you a tenant here? I don't recall seeing you before. Looking at Kasumijoka Utaha's cool, composed demeanor, Shirakawa, being the landlord, asked casually. A stranger appearing on the 14th floor warranted a question. Kasumijoka glanced at the boy in the elevator who also wore a student uniform and looked rather clean and youthful. Visiting someone. After a brief explanation, she added with a dry jab, and your way of hitting on people is pretty outdated. I'm here. Not very good at flirting, huh? Just as the elevator reached the 14th floor, the doors opened to reveal Azumi Mayo waiting. You must be a Romanga sensei? Before meeting in person, Kasumijoka had already done a video call with Azumi and recognized the youthful-looking housewife with braided hair. Yes, but please don't call me sensei. I was actually about to come down to get you. The building is pretty strict. Strangers can't access the upper floors without an escort. Izumi smiled as she explained, but then her eyes landed on Shirakawa and she paused in surprise. She quickly said, "Shirakawa-kun, this is Miss Kasumijoka. My friend. We're meeting to discuss a new book's illustrations. I didn't expect you two would meet in the elevator. I was just about to come down to get her. It's fine." Since the upper floors were the foundation of his personal harem, Shirakawa wouldn't normally allow unknown men up. But Hangako had been busy just now and didn't stop Kasumijoka Utaha. It was reasonable enough, especially since she was here for work. Shirakawa didn't mind a female guest visiting his tenant. Seeing that Shirakawa had no objections, Izumi sighed in relief. With a smile, she looked at the girl who seemed close in age to Shirakawa and said, "Miss Kasumijoka, I forgot to introduce you. Shirakawa-kun is the landlord of this building. Since this is a high-end apartment complex in Chiba Prefecture, access for strangers is tightly restricted." "I see." Hearing the explanation, Kasumijoka looked at Shirakawa again. The apartment where Aramanga-sensei lived had impressive decor. And as the building's owner, it was perfectly reasonable for him to ask about unfamiliar faces. She had mistaken it as a pickup line? Realizing this, her expression became slightly awkward. With a hint of apology, she said, "Sorry, I misunderstood you earlier." "No problem." Shirakawa could sense her mildly tsundeer personality. Compared to Yuki Noshida, her attitude was much more palatable. He didn't mind. If she really did end up working with Aramanga-sensei, they'd probably be seeing each other a lot. Back in his own apartment, Shirakawa quickly washed up and changed clothes, then reopened the dimensional chat group. After checking in last night, he hadn't looked again. "Aqua, ordinary high schooler, I've already ordered the staff you asked for. When are you coming over? Let's go defeat the Demon King." "Sakurajima, am I in such a rush to beat the Demon King?" "Asuna, I think I heard something about Aqua needing to defeat the Demon King to return to the heavens." "Blue Ribbon, Aqua, how are you this week despite being a goddess?" "Blue Ribbon, as a god, defeating a Demon King should be easy for you. So why do you keep dragging Shirakawa into it?" "Aqua, defeating the Demon King is only easy because I, the great goddess, grant powerful support to the other reincarnators. Without me, the world would have been overrun by the Demon King's army long ago." Watching the conversation in the dimensional chat group, Shirakawa wasn't surprised that Aqua and Hestia had started bickering again. That always happened when they were both online. But this time, he actually agreed with Aqua. The capital of the kingdom was under constant attack from the Demon King's army. Without those adventurers she reincarnated with cheat-like abilities, the world's difficulty would be off the charts. Though these debates always turned into a mess, Shirakawa just wanted to use the chat group to grow stronger. As for his current plans, he checked his points. After yesterday's sign-in, he had 171 in total. It would cost 150 points to head to Hestia's Denmuki world and establish a stable teleportation anchor. When will the group expand? Even getting more rescue missions would help. Looking at his measly points, Shirakawa sighed. When will I ever save up enough to buy a surprise loot box? He changed into another outfit. An adventurer's outfit he bought yesterday in the Konosuba world. At least the style wouldn't look out of place in Denmuki, helping him avoid unnecessary attention from local gods. Just as he was about to redeem a teleportation anchor, a chat group notification popped up and caught his eye. New member Healing Goddess has joined the chat. New member Ryaz has joined the chat. Healing Goddess, what is this dimensional chat group? Why did it suddenly appear in my mind? Can someone explain? Ryaz, Healing Goddess. Ryaz, what a coincidence. I'm a high-class devil. Asuna, we're not entirely sure what the chat group is, but it brings people from different worlds together here. Aqua, that's right. So, you're a goddess too? Healing Goddess, yep. But I'm a newbie goddess. I was just worrying about how to find a proper hero to save my S-class difficulty world, Gaia Brand, and then this chat group appeared. Finally, new members. Seeing the familiar names, Shirakawa quickly recalled who they were. The Healing Goddess was from the cautious hero world. Wristheart, the absurd and chaotic newbie goddess with rather weak abilities. From her messages, it seemed she had just accepted the mission to save Gaia Brand and hadn't even selected a hero yet. Maybe he could give her a blank profession panel and let her gain a hero profession? As for Ryaz, although her name alone wasn't that telling, she revealed herself as a high-class devil. That narrowed it down. She was clearly Ryaz Gremory from High School DxD, the crimson-haired ruin princess with a known habit of sleeping naked. Looks like there are even more options now. He wasn't in the mood to chat idly. Shirakawa opened the Points Exchange store and looked at the 50.7 days temporary teleportation anchor. Power was still the top priority. He immediately made the purchase. Do you want to travel to the Denmuki world? Chapter 71, Who said a chaotic evil god isn't still a god? The worlds of high school DxD and cautious hero were certainly interesting, but he didn't yet have a reason to go there. For now, his priority was strength. And the most direct way to gain strength was to recruit more of the pleasures chosen. His goal was to go to the Danmiki world and build his own familia. Each chosen increased his stats by 10%. While it was a percentage-based growth, more chosen meant significantly more power. Let's go to Danmiki first. There are plenty of growth opportunities there. He finalized the exchange. As points were deducted and world options appeared before him, Shirakawa set the anchor in Danmiki. But unlike before, this time something new popped up because of his god-class profession. Heading into a world ruled by gods, a special system notification appeared: you are entering the Danmiki world. Dimensional chat group has detected that member normal high school student has a god-class identity. Spend 20 points to obscure your identity. So, if I use this feature, I can create a proper identity and set up my familia without issues? To form a familia in Danmiki, you needed to be a god. Spending 20 points for a legal identity seemed like a solid investment. Yes. With the 20-point deduction, Shirakawa had just enough left for a stable teleportation anchor. And that was enough. As his consciousness faded temporarily, he was sent to the Danmiki world. Aqua again? Why does she keep stirring up trouble? Still, I doubt Shirakawa would choose me as his top god. Lying lazily on the couch was a petite black-haired girl with twin tails. Though she looked like a child, her figure was anything but. Her appearance was a strange blend of young and dignified, cute yet commanding. The most eye-catching part was the blue ribbon tying her white skirt. She didn't yet have a familia of her own. Hestia was still crashing at her friend Hephaestus's place. As she scrolled through the now more active chat group, she started to realize something. Strong members like these were probably not going to become her children. Her only real prospect was Sakura Jimamai, who claimed to be an ordinary high school girl from a world with no supernatural powers. Just as she was about to message her privately, a flash of light caught her eye. Looking out the window, Hestia narrowed her eyes. Another god coming down from the heavens? Hephaestus, the goddess of the forge, also looked up. Watching the streak of light tear across the sky and descend upon Horario, she muttered, a stranger. Never felt his presence in heaven before. At the top of Babel Tower, in the heart of the labyrinth city, the goddess of beauty Freya. Clad in silver hair and perfect curves. Also noticed the falling star. A glint of curiosity appeared in her eyes. A god she'd never encountered, not even in the endless years in the upper realm. Could this be a newly born god? Her lips curled into a faint smile. Perhaps this stranger would stir up some fun in Horario. Shirakawa arrived in the Danmiki world and took in the majestic city before him. A massive metropolis surrounded by towering walls. The buildings near the edges were tall, but the closer they got to the center, the lower they became. And at the very heart stood the towering Babel Tower. This city was far grander than Axel in the Konosuba world. It was the center of the world, and the difference was obvious at a glance. Should I ask Hestia first? If there was anyone he was familiar with, it would be Blue Ribbon from the Dimensional Chat group. Hestia would definitely know the ins and outs of Horario, the dungeon city. With a proper guide, starting a familia would be much easier. Looking around at the various adventurers heading toward the dungeon with all sorts of weapons in hand, Shirakawa realized it was early morning and they were all moving in groups. He had already changed clothes to blend in naturally, avoiding unwanted attention from strange attire. Only the chat group panel, visible solely to the user, appeared in front of him. He opened the chat interface and messaged Blue Ribbon, who was still bantering with Aqua and the goddess Wristheart. Ordinary high schooler, Blue Ribbon, are you free now? I just arrived at Horario this morning. I still need a local guide. Aqua, Shirakawa, why are you going to her world? Healing goddess. Shirakawa, are you really that popular? Would you like to join me, a goddess, in saving the world? Aqua, shut up. Blue Ribbon, Shirakawa-kun, you've finally come to your senses? Where exactly are you? I'll come get you right away. Just wait. Aqua, hey. Shirakawa-kun, the news about you defeating the Demon King's general has already reached the capital. You might even meet the royal family. Aqua, can you come back now? Hestia, lying on the sofa, jumped up the moment she saw Shirakawa's message. She didn't even consider the possibility that he might be that descended god. She quickly adjusted her outfit and prepared to meet him at her best. Her sudden movements surprised her friend Hephaestus, who asked curiously, Hestia, where are you going? I've figured it out. Decided to move out and find your own place? Exactly. As a high-ranking god, I should act like one. I can't keep living like this. Only then will I be able to start a familia. Even with her binding chest strap, Her breasts bounced as she stood. Hestia looked seriously at Hephaestus, her expression determined. She explained briefly and rushed off to meet Shirakawa at the location he marked. Hopefully she can keep this mindset going. Watching her friend leave, Hephaestus chuckled quietly. At last. Peace and quiet. Hestia didn't make Shirakawa wait long. The distance wasn't that far, and with her twin tails and extremely recognizable low-eye figure, especially her exaggeratedly full curves, she quickly drew attention even while wearing slippers and running down the streets of Orario. Shirakawa-kun. Even from afar, Hestia spotted him and waved excitedly. Though he wore an adventurer's outfit, she recognized him instantly. With her divine power sealed, she was no different from a regular human. After running from her friend's place, she bent over with her hands on her knees, gasping for air. Once she caught her breath, Hestia looked up, taking in the clean, stylish hairstyle and youthful charm of the boy in front of her. Definitely not just a newbie adventurer. She'd spent points to watch the live stream from Aqua's world and knew very well. His overwhelming magic power, speed, and strength probably placed him around level 7? He could definitely stand at the top of Arario's adventurers. She greeted him, Shirakawa-kun, just call me Hestia. If you don't mind, you could also call me Goddess. I'll just call you Hestia. Shirakawa's goals in this world were simple: recruit pleasure gods chosen, and grow stronger. With the identity masking provided by the chat group, he didn't need to worry about issues when forming a familia. Being cut off mid-speech, Hestia's prepared lines were useless. But she'd anticipated this. The only thing gods could offer adventurers was divine grace. For someone like Shirakawa who already had immense power, that grace wasn't necessary. But if she could get his help in creating a familia, everything would go much smoother. Remembering what Hephaestus had said, Hestia decided to throw caution aside and speak boldly. This may be forward of me. But what would it take for you to help me build my familia? No can do. There were already people in the chat group who kept asking to add him to their familia. If he hadn't unlocked the divine interface, he might have considered it. Who could resist a cute little goddess? But forming a familia and getting close to Hestia didn't compare to the stat boosts from the pleasure gods chosen. He shook his head and refused. There were already 3 known gods in the chat group. Surely Hestia would accept him as a fellow god. Without holding back, he asked plainly, Hestia, can you tell me what the requirements are to create a familia? First, you have to be a god from the upper realm. She responded without hesitation, but after answering, she examined him more closely. She didn't sense any divine aura from Shirakawa. A regular adventurer can't create a familia. But if you're interested, you could join mine. I'd make you captain. And of course, you'd get the love of a top goddess. But she left that part out. She looked at him expectantly. She wanted to promise more, but there wasn't much else she could offer. I see. So what's the actual process for forming one? To be honest, I'm kind of a newborn god. He didn't try to hide it. Since the chat group could blur identity details, there was no issue. He was fairly familiar with Hestia's personality, so he laid it all out. Eh? When Shirakawa said he was a new god, Hestia froze, overwhelmed by the flood of information. So in the chat group, aside from Aqua and the healing goddess, Shirakawa, the guy who often streamed and asked about joining familias, was secretly a god too? And every time he appeared, it was to ask about joining a familia? Turns out, this guy was a fellow god all along. More importantly, she didn't sense any deception in him, meaning he really was a newborn god. Hestia awkwardly tugged at the corners of her lips. She almost wanted to dig a hole and crawl into it. She muttered bitterly, then why didn't you say so? In the group. Like Aqua always does? Going around bragging about being a god like she does just feels unnecessary. As chat group members got stronger, Shirakawa preferred improving himself rather than chatting casually. At the very least, his strength had to match his title. He shook his head lightly. Don't worry about my identity. The group lets me blur it by spending points. Creating a familia definitely won't be a problem. So that's it. So the god who descended into the dungeon city Orario just now was you? That unfamiliar presence did feel a bit like Shirakawa. The idea of recruiting him into her own familia was now out of the question. Still, considering there were other members in the dimensional chat group, Hestia didn't feel too discouraged. As the host here, she warmly explained, forming a familia is actually pretty easy. You just need to register at the guild. As long as your godhood checks out, once you've successfully registered your familia, you can start accepting members in Orario. It was a case of shared struggles. Like her, Shirakawa was an unknown god from another world. Recruiting familia members would be tough. She tried to pat Shirakawa's shoulder to comfort him, but their height difference made it impossible even when she stood on tiptoe. Seeing Shirakawa's puzzled expression, she awkwardly pointed ahead and quickly changed the subject. Let's go. I'll take you to the guild. With the chat group's identity masking and my backing, registering your familia will be easy. Thanks. It was a simple give and take. Looking at the petite girl beside him, Shirakawa smiled. If your future familia ever gets into trouble, I'll help out however I can. Though he was technically the junior god, he spoke as if offering protection. Hestia didn't even know how to respond to that. She led him through the streets until they arrived at the guild. Identity confirmation and familia registration had to be done here. Since exploration of the dungeon had only just begun, there were only a few adventurers in the hall. As a not-so-reliable god, Hestia's arrival drew some looks. A young woman with shoulder-length brown hair, wearing a black guild uniform with a white shirt and round glasses, approached them. Her green eyes and long ears marked her as an elf, and her gentle smile held a hint of congratulations. Lady Hestia, are you here to register an adventurer? Aina, this is my friend. Also a god from the heavens. He just arrived in Orario and wants to register his own familia. Aina looked surprised. She examined Shirakawa, who she had assumed was just another adventurer looking to join Hestia's familia. She hadn't expected him to be a god too. He was definitely a new face. Sir, if you're here to register your familia, please come with me. Alright. Shirakawa followed Aina. As a god, his registration couldn't be done at the regular adventurer counter. She led him into one of the guild's VIP rooms. After pouring him a cup of tea, she placed a form on the table and explained seriously, Sir, please fill out your registration information here. Thank you. Shirakawa quickly scanned the form. It didn't ask for much. Just his divine name and affiliation. Thanks to the chat group's identity masking, he simply wrote Shirakawa and, after a moment's hesitation, listed his divine title as God of Pleasure. While the divine concept he wielded hadn't matured to that level, there was no rule saying an outer world chaotic god couldn't call himself one. With that, his first goal in the Danmaki world, forming a familia, was officially complete. Chapter 72, Familia Formed. Lily's invitation. Lord Shirakawa, your familia registration is complete. Now I'd like to ask, what direction will your familia take? Will it be a business-based one, or a combat-focused one for dungeon exploration? Combat familia. Shirakawa didn't hesitate. If he wanted to expand his influence in Orario, combat was the only viable path. Taking on the dungeon head-on. It was best to get things done here while he was still at the guild. Understood. Aina filled out the remaining sections. The paperwork would be sent to the god overseeing the guild. Aranos. For approval. She gathered the documents with a smile. The process will be completed soon. Please wait here, Lord Shirakawa. Thank you. Shirakawa sipped his tea. The guild service impressed him. While he waited, Hestia slipped back in and eyed his teacup with envy. She remembered when she formed her own familia. She hadn't gotten this kind of treatment at all. Looking at Shirakawa reclining lazily on the sofa, she asked eagerly, So? How's the registration going? From her tone alone, Shirakawa could already tell she wanted a favor. It's under review now. The result should come soon. Just tell me what you need. He said bluntly. Well, I have a request. It's about my Sakurajima. I want to recruit her into my familia. To freely travel between worlds, you need 150 points. That's because you can only place a teleport anchor in a world you've physically visited. In Danmaki's normal timeline, the story would begin in a few days when Lilyruka meets Spell. But now that Shirakawa was here, he intended to rewrite that narrative. He didn't mind Hestia recruiting Mai. As long as he secured Hestia, her familia was essentially his too. More importantly, the requirements for a chosen of pleasure were that the subject's body, heart, and faith belonged to him. There was no rule saying they couldn't join another god's familia. It was actually common in Orario for new adventurers to join strong familias for faster growth. Having Mai as Hestia's first member would completely change the story's direction, shifting her focus to recruiting from the chat group instead. That would make future plans easier. Thinking this through, Shirakawa quickly agreed. Fine. One more thing. If you can ensure your familia only accepts women, I can offer some extra help. Like access to other worlds' power systems. Hestia's limited understanding of the Konosuba world would help here. The adventurer card system, level ups, job changes. All these came from exploiting an information gap. As long as Shirakawa left the divine mark on their lower belly and used a magic device to appraise it, they could receive adventurer cards from the Konosuba system. Letting Hestia handle status updates wouldn't betray her original dream of building a familia and would also secure the foundation for Shirakawa's future harem base. Really? Realizing she'd spoken too loudly, Hestia quickly lowered her voice, her eyes wide in disbelief. She knew other worlds had power systems, but didn't expect Shirakawa to be able to bring them in wholesale. That would massively boost her familia's strength. Still, why did he insist on only female members? When Hestia seriously thought about the question, a smile tugged at her lips. Hey, Shirakawa-kun. Don't tell me. You've got that whole love at first sight thing going on for me? That's right. When dealing with Hestia, you had to go straight for the direct approach. Shirakawa smiled and nodded. That was genuinely how he felt. Who would say no to a busty, innocent, and adorable lily goddess? But his straightforward attitude made Hestia's cheeks flush red. She stole glances at Shirakawa's side profile. Honestly. Yeah, it made her heart flutter a little. We're not even that close yet. Maybe you're just feeling something temporary. I think using the word like is a little rushed. Straightforward. And it made her shy. Seeing Hestia's reaction, Shirakawa knew he had gotten the outcome he wanted. He replied seriously, we still have plenty of time to get to know each other. Shirakawa-sama, your familia registration has been approved. Ina didn't keep him waiting long. She soon returned with the approved application form, stamped with Arano's seal. Signifying that Shirakawa's familia was now officially allowed to recruit in Orario. If you've already decided on a familia emblem, you can register it at the guild. I'll be your assigned advisor from now on. Thank you. Shirakawa smiled and nodded. Now he needed to think about how to make money. With enough money, he could buy or lease a home base. Unlike the world of Konosuba. In Danmaki's world, the main way to earn Valis was through killing monsters, collecting magic stones, and selling them to the guild. There was also war games. But that's definitely not on the table right now. Ina was genuinely surprised by Shirakawa's sincere demeanor. She had never met a god quite this pleasant. She smiled and replied, that's part of my job. Looking up at Orario's bright sky, Shirakawa began mapping out his next steps. As a god, entering the dungeon could have consequences. He glanced at Hestia standing beside him. According to the original story, it was the god's entrance into the dungeon that caused an anomaly. The birth of the floor boss in the safety zone of the 18th floor. The Black Goliath. The dungeon itself loathes the presence of gods. With that in mind, Shirakawa quickly opened his god profession panel. He hadn't checked it since the number of his chosen of pleasure had surpassed 10. As it unfolded, the details appeared before him: profession, god divine attribute, pleasure authority, circle of avidity followers, 0 chosen of pleasure, 11 sub-gods, 0 core skills, divine blessing, ecstasy domain, authority of carnal discipline, power of faith basic skills, divine mark, level 2, faith extraction, level 1, blessing, stat boost, level 1, blessing, luck boost, level 1. After skimming through the updated stats panel, a particular passage popped into his mind, just as the hymns praise the Lord of Pleasure. Sculpt, sing, and pursue every dream of ecstasy in his name. Satisfy all hunger. Fear no risk. For it is your source of bliss, this. This isn't a Chaos God panel or something, right? His mouth twitched involuntarily. His original class panel hadn't been overwritten, rather, everything was now split into 2 sections. The latter half hadn't changed much. But after evolving into a god class profession, a bunch of new fields had appeared. Followers, chosen, and sub-gods. Followers were easy to understand. Just like Aqua and Eris, who had their own churches. Sub-gods, meanwhile, were those who pledged allegiance to the god of pleasure and became part of his divine hierarchy. So, this circle of avidity. Is it really what I think it is? Rather than working slowly over time, it would instantly change a poor person's life. Showering them in wealth and pleasure. Then, it would crush everything. When they lost everything and couldn't recover, they would offer absolute devotion. Or even their soul. To the god of pleasure. So, was he really a chaos god? According to Warhammer 40k, outsiders were the ultimate demons. That logic kind of held up in this crossover world too. After obtaining the god profession panel, Shirakawa hadn't expected his godhood to merge with his identity as a transmigrator. Through the mastery panel, he'd become an unnamed chaos god of some alternate dimension? Shirakawa-kun? Are you okay? Noticing the change in his expression, Hestia turned toward him. Out of concern for the new godling, she asked kindly, did something happen? Kind of. There's just a lot to consider. Besides putting up a recruitment notice at the guild, I'll need a base. Naturally, he didn't mention his inner turmoil. Shirakawa just briefly explained what was needed to establish a familia. But a possibility came to mind. What if, as a chaos god, his mere presence triggered dungeon anomalies? Could he still be accepted by the dungeon? It might be worth a try. Even if the dungeon created a new floor boss, he had enough power to handle it easily now. You don't need to rush these things. Hestia smiled and reassured him. She herself had been like this at the beginning, but now she'd learned to take it easy. Luckily, with the dimensional chat group, she also had to start working harder, like trying to recruit Sakura Jimimai as her own familia member. And tonight, where would she sleep? The moment Hestia remembered that, her expression froze. She had promised Hephaestus she'd find a place to stay. But she figured it'd be fine, considering how many times Shirakawa had helped her. Surely he wouldn't mind? Shirakawa-kun, where are you going next? Don't go into the dungeon. Gods entering causes anomalies. Although, with your strength, you probably could handle it. Understood. He could take advice. Shirakawa smiled back at Hestia. The world of Konosuba was still an option. For now, making money was the priority. He had to explore the dungeon. He had come this far, after all. He headed toward the towering skyscraper Babel, while Hestia returned to Hephaestus' place to find a spot to stay. As for future familia recruitment, he didn't plan to use the traditional method of the gods in Orario. Once someone was willing to give him their all, he could simply grant them the status of chosen of pleasure. Using Konosuba's magic tech devices to assess their abilities. That would work just as well. Recruiting a familia might be a bit tricky. Maybe I should test out the Ring of Greed's authority. It might corrupt them nicely. Heading toward the dungeon entrance, Shirakawa saw adventuring parties here and there, each with supporters trailing behind, lugging oversized packs. Since he hadn't yet mastered any spatial type skills, venturing into the dungeon still required a partner. Hiring a supporter meant splitting the profits, so there was no need to worry about money. Shirakawa casually scanned the people around him. Eventually, his eyes settled on a girl in a gray robe with a hood. Her figure even smaller than Hestia's. Carrying a backpack too large for her frame. A palom. Her appearance felt familiar. She wasn't with any adventurer team and seemed to be looking around for someone to hire her. Then, Liliaruka-ard's gaze met Shirakawa's. He had an unfamiliar face, likely a newcomer to Orario, and given his direction, it seemed he was heading to the dungeon. Carrying her oversized bag, she approached. Looking up at the tall, clean-looking young man, she spoke with genuine sincerity. Hello, adventurer. Are you in need of a supporter? Still quoting the usual price, Lily added seriously, the commission is just 3,000 valis per day. The girl had short, slightly curled brown hair. Her height was about the same as Mary's. Not to mention her cute looks. Shirakawa instantly recognized her. She was the supporter from the Soma Familia. Liliaruka-ard, who hadn't yet met the protagonist from the original Danmaki story. She was still wandering around, looking for a team. Shirakawa also knew her personality. Trapped in the swamp that was the Soma Familia, her reputation as a supporter wasn't great. Skimming off commissions, inflating prices. A twisted worldview formed through a survival of the fittest society. Shirakawa didn't have any lofty ideals about rescuing Lili heroines or anything. If anything did pique his interest, it was the divine authority of the Circle of Avidity on his god panel. So he didn't refuse. Of course. The chance to escape the Soma Familia was right in front of her. When adventurers finally broke under the pressure, what followed was loyalty born of despair. If every heroine needed elaborate effort to win over, Shirakawa would have been exhausted. He always believed. Don't miss out on a good girl, and don't waste time on a bad one. Even if Lily's nature was just a product of oppression. Without hesitation, he activated his authority as the god of pleasure. The Circle of Avidity. There were no casting effects, but it felt like a brand being etched into her. It remained on Lily's body. Then shall we head out now? Lily hadn't expected Shirakawa to agree so easily. His gear was, honestly, a bit plain. Still, he might bring in some loot. And if not, she could always use the excuse of helping exchange the loot to snatch all his magic stones as her commission. The extra cut? That was her real profit. Having been squeezed dry by Soma Familia adventurers, even her part-time job at a flower shop had been interfered with. She harbored only resentment toward Orario's adventurers. Even toward Shirakawa, who seemed nice on the surface. She assumed he was no different deep down. Supporters were always exploited. That daily torture had worn her down. She only wanted to live a normal life again. For some reason, though, she had this sudden, strange feeling. That this under-equipped adventurer was some kind of treasure trove. She felt that if she stuck with him, she'd definitely make a fortune. Saving enough to buy her way out of her familia and quit being a supporter, Lily beamed brightly. My name's Lily. What should I call you? Just call me Shirakawa. Okay. Eager to reach her goal, her enthusiasm was overflowing. Shirakawa-kun, is this your first time in the dungeon? I'll be your guide. Yeah. Shirakawa could clearly sense her change in demeanor. That had to be the effect of the circle of avidity. He didn't mind. Everything was proceeding just as he planned. Following Lily's lead, they moved toward the dungeon stairwell. Shirakawa was also quite curious about the monsters in this world. Chapter 73, Leveling Grounds for the Chosen of Pleasure. A chance encounter with Iztan. They climbed down the long staircase toward the dungeon's upper levels, passing quite a few adventurers along the way. However, most were in groups. Some were obviously stronger, judging by the high-end gear they wore. It wasn't hard to distinguish. Compared to them, Shirakawa, who carried no weapon, and Lily, carrying a massive pack, stood out. They looked like rookie adventurers. The dungeon was a womb for monsters. When slain, they turned to black ash, which returned to the dungeon and birthed new beasts. A cycle of life. The upper floors didn't radiate a strong sense of life force. But stepping into the dungeon gave Shirakawa a powerful impression. It felt like a living nest. From an adventurer's perspective, the endless stream of monsters was a perfect place to gain experience and grow stronger. It was just a pity he couldn't bring his chosen of pleasure into the Danmaki world. Otherwise, he'd already have a full familia. Shirakawa didn't dwell on it. He was still paying attention to whether his identity as a chaos god would trigger any dungeon anomalies. Following Lily, they arrived at the first floor. A pitch-black cave-like space dimly lit by faintly glowing luminous fruits on the walls. For Shirakawa, venturing into the dungeon was a new and curious experience. What were the monsters and floor bosses like in terms of strength? Naturally, he wanted to know. Without concern for Lily's presence, he summoned the Holy Sword, all things of creation. Its crimson blade radiated a violent aura. He unleashed mana through his Holy Sword wielder profession. Using it like a detection spell, he scanned a 100-meter radius and instantly locked onto several low-level goblins. Extremely weak monsters. He'd hunted far more in the Goblin Slayer world. But given this was a beginner zone, suited for level 1 adventurers, the strength didn't seem excessive. If I really am heading down the evil god route, maybe I could build a subspace mobile fortress and bring my chosen here? This would be a great place for leveling them. That thought flashed through his mind. It was still a ways off, though. For now, Shirakawa only had basic authority as the god of pleasure. He still lacked many the circle of gluttony, for gourmet indulgence, the circle of carnality, for ultimate desire and depravity, the circle of paramountcy, for power over others, the circle of vainglory, for the pursuit of glory and recognition, and the circle of indolency, for false paradise and rest. Note, it's /6 circles of seduction from Warhammer 40k, to sum it up. In Danmaki, he was the newly born god of chaos, yet righteous pleasure. However, as he wielded the Holy Sword, all things of creation, Shirakawa could sense goblins spawning from the dungeon walls around him. Their numbers were rising sharply. Is the dungeon rejecting outsiders? That seemed like the most likely explanation. He cancelled his mana release ability, relying only on the stat boosts granted by his godhood. His physique alone was over 30 times stronger than a normal adult male. Even without using mana release or other profession-based skills, Shirakawa estimated that his strength was enough to walk freely on the 60th floor of the dungeon. Interesting. Lily, who followed behind as his supporter, had no idea what Shirakawa was thinking. As she stared at the weapon he summoned, radiating intense energy, she struggled to maintain her expression. Her pupils contracted slightly. If she wasn't mistaken, this was an extremely powerful magic sword? His gear looked completely ordinary, yet he could suddenly produce such an expensive-looking weapon. More importantly, she hadn't sensed it on him at all. Could it be a unique skill? Normally, if she encountered a powerful adventurer, Lily would never dare harbor any ulterior motives. But even she failed to notice the effect of the circle of avidity. Under the ring's influence, she ignored the danger. The only thought left was that she could probably make a lot of money off Shirakawa to fulfill her own goals. And then, monsters appeared ahead. Their low growls caught Lily's attention. A large number of goblins were closing in. She looked at Shirakawa and reminded him, these are the lowest tier monsters. But he didn't need the warning. With raw physical ability alone, Shirakawa burst into motion at a speed invisible to the naked eye. With a casual sweep of his sword, his attacks, infused with a soul-level sharpness, sliced through the goblins as easily as cutting threads. The goblins, once attempting a group assault, were cleaved in half and instantly disintegrated into black ash, leaving behind small, fingernail-sized magic stones. You successfully killed Goblin, Level 1, EXP plus 100. You successfully killed Goblin, Level 1, EXP plus 100. You successfully killed Goblin, level 1, EXP plus 100, that's a pretty generous amount of EXP. Shirakawa didn't care much. He casually tossed a sack to Lily, leaving the crystal collection to her. This whole bait tactic thing really wasn't bad. The so-called circle of avidity, unless the wearer had an unshakable will, would gradually corrupt them with greed. Lily was no exception. Eventually, she would fall into the void of desire. The short battle left Lily stunned. Though goblins weren't strong individually, their sheer number would trouble even a level 2 adventurer. To eliminate them so cleanly in an instant. What kind of power did he actually have? She hurriedly took the sack from him. Though he didn't speak, it was obvious, she was to collect the dropped crystals. My gut feeling was right. Watching Shirakawa continue slaying goblins, Lily diligently picked up the magic stones. Occasionally, one would just slide into her sleeve and into her own pocket. With so many on the ground, taking just a few shouldn't be noticeable, right? Besides, this was just the start. As they went deeper into the dungeon, monsters would grow stronger and drop more valuable stones. She kept confirming Shirakawa wasn't watching her. He was fully focused on the hunt. Still, Lily kept a cautious mindset. For every 4 stones she picked up, she would secretly pocket 1. With such large quantities, Shirakawa probably wouldn't notice. And if he kept going deeper? Just imagining it. Lily couldn't wait. Maybe she could continue teaming up with Shirakawa until she earned enough to leave the Soma Familia, continuing as a supporter. Make enough money for the rest of her life. She hadn't realized yet that the circle of avidity had already planted a seed of corruption in her. What began as a plan to escape her familia had evolved into a desire for wealth and luxury. Shirakawa-sama, floors 1 to 5 mostly spawn weak goblins. If you want stronger monsters, we need to head deeper. Lily's eyes gleamed. She pulled out a dungeon map from her bag. While lower floors changed, upper-level layouts stayed relatively stable. Pointing ahead, she said, I'll lead the way. I've got maps of the upper floors. With the circle of avidity granted to Lily, Shirakawa could clearly sense her shifting mindset. Her thoughts had changed. But that was exactly what he wanted to see. If she ever started leaning toward the unknowable side, then he'd step in to stop it. He cleared the goblins around them. No mana needed. Just raw stats and weapons were more than enough. Shirakawa smiled and said, sure. The monsters on this floor are pretty dull. Let's hope the ones deeper in are more interesting. Then let's go. With a map in hand and Shirakawa as powerful as he was, Lily, even as a supporter, took the lead confidently. Prerequisites met. Would you like to unlock the new profession, supporter? Shirakawa ignored the new class. Right now, the only thing that interested him was the adventurer role from the Konosuba world. There, he could learn all skills without changing classes. But the SP cost was high. Still, with his proficiency system, cost was never a problem. Reaching the second floor of the dungeon, they again faced large groups of goblins. But with no resistance, they advanced smoothly. It was easy. The dropped magic stones already filled Lily's bag. She switched to an empty one. Her stealing ratio also increased. Now it was 3 to 1. Shirakawa noticed everything, of course. But his main concern was unlocking more chosen of pleasure candidates and gaining stats. By the time they reached the 5th floor, the dungeon's environment clearly changed. The tunnel walls were now made of dirt. Glowing moss helped visibility. The monsters also changed. Clown imps, dungeon lizards. Their numbers were large, but Shirakawa mowed them down effortlessly. Then, what's going on? A loud disturbance ahead made Lily freeze. If she remembered correctly, there shouldn't be a monster like this on the 5th floor. Looking through the dark tunnel, a large, brown-furred, 2-legged monster emerged. Driven mad by pursuit, a minotaur charged toward them, horns gleaming with a bull's fury. Its stomps made the ground shake. What? What is that monster? It radiated power she'd never seen. Lily instinctively backed away, her large backpack weighing her down. But to Shirakawa, the minotaur was all too familiar. A 15th floor monster. Minotaur. Not that strong. What stood out? Was its timing. In the original storyline, this monster escaped during the Loki Familia's expedition return. Could I actually run into Eyes Wallenstein? Watching the minotaur charge toward them, Shirakawa wasn't alarmed at all. For a level 1 newbie, this would usually be instant death. Still, getting a chance to test the strength of a 15th floor monster in advance was like a gift delivered to his doorstep. With a powerful push from his legs, Shirakawa moved so fast that only an afterimage remained. The ground beneath where he had stood shattered like a spiderweb. Even Lily, who had been fully focused, couldn't catch the movement. Let alone the minotaur, whose strength wasn't particularly remarkable. It couldn't react at all before Shirakawa appeared right in front of it. Driven by instinct, the Minotaur threw a punch. But what met it was only a flash of red sword light, cleanly severing its upper body in two. Blood gushed out. Once it was completely dead, it disintegrated into black ash and returned to the dungeon. All that remained was a fist-sized magic stone, which landed on the floor with a crisp clink. That's it? Lily, who had only ever supported low-tier adventurers before, had never seen a Minotaur up close. It was powerful enough to make her tremble in fear. And yet, she stared in disbelief at Shirakawa ahead. The battle ended so fast that she didn't even know how to feel. He was strong. At least the strength of a level 3 adventurer. Especially the speed and decisiveness of the strike. It was no different from how he handled those large groups of goblins earlier. Such a powerful adventurer, and yet she'd never heard of him in Orario. Maybe he came from somewhere else? Lily couldn't figure it out. But she was sure she could make a lot of money by sticking with Shirakawa. She ran over to collect the magic stone dropped by the Minotaur, smiling with admiration. Shirakawa-sama, you're seriously amazing. You just took down such a strong monster like it was nothing. I just got lucky. What Shirakawa meant by lucky was naturally his invitation to the dimensional chat group. If he weren't bringing a supporter and ventured in alone, with his base stats and holy sword alone, he could handle down to floor 40 with no problem. As for deeper floors, like bosses, those would require mana-based skills. If only he could use explosion magic freely, it'd be a breeze to deal with. The only thing that might pose a challenge would be the black dragon in the 59th floor's deep labyrinth. The final unresolved mission out of the 3 great quests. Even Zeus and Hera Familia couldn't take that monster down. That one might be tricky. But speedrunning the dungeon wasn't his plan. The deeper the floors, the more complex the environment. Not to mention the massive ripple effect that would come with slaying the black dragon. The dungeon was essentially the training ground for candidates blessed by the god of pleasure. Blitzing through it all would be boring. Lily quickly shook her head, sounding earnest. I don't think your strength is just luck. You must have worked really hard. She was desperate to build a closer connection. To become short-term partners. And earn as much valus as she could from him. But Shirakawa could read her thoughts easily with just a glance. He lightly shook his head, not paying it any mind. And then came the sound of faint footsteps from the darkness ahead. A tall figure with long golden hair emerged, wearing armor crafted from an unknown material that accentuated her perfect form. She carried a rapier in hand. Under the dim glow of the luminous moss, her goddess-like beauty and heroic aura stood out unmistakably. Eyes Wallenstein. A senior member of the Loki Familia and a level 5 warrior known as the Sword Princess in Orario. Under the faint light, her cold, beautiful face was clearly visible. She scanned the battlefield, noticing the remains of the earlier fight. There were no signs that the Minotaur had escaped via another tunnel. Which meant the monster from the 15th floor had been dealt with by Shirakawa right in front of her. And without much evidence of a fight. With her combat experience, she instantly realized the most crucial point. The battle had ended almost instantly. More importantly, Shirakawa's face was unfamiliar. The weapon in his hand radiated a power even she found overwhelming. A weapon forged by a god? Eyes didn't ask directly. She wasn't good at conversations to begin with. And since it was her fault the monster had escaped, her face showed no emotion. She said in a cold, calm tone, apologies. That monster escaped during our expedition. Sorry for the trouble. It's fine. Shirakawa thought her personality matched his impression of her. Despite her cold exterior, Eyes was a bit of an airhead. Just because he happened to run into this plot development didn't mean he needed to force a connection. He passed by Eyes with Lily in tow. What's the name of your weapon? Unable to hold back her curiosity, Eyes Wallenstein finally asked in her usual emotionless way. It's very special. Chapter 74, Lily's Yearning for Salvation. To Lily, today could only be described as dramatic. She met an unfamiliar adventurer, Shirakawa, and assumed he was just average. But she never expected he'd turn out to be such a powerhouse. If it hadn't gotten late and they lacked proper resting supplies, they might have gone all the way to the 17th floor. During their journey, wave after wave of monsters came flooding out of the dungeon, too many to count. Yet Shirakawa never seemed to falter. To be precise, every monster from floor 1 to 15 made absolutely no difference when facing him. Could he actually be stronger than the Sword Princess? As they left the dungeon, night had fully descended upon Orario. The stars above sparkled brightly. Without the dungeon's pressure, even the air seemed clearer. Thinking back on the day's haul, Lily felt thrilled. The number of monsters Shirakawa defeated left bags full of magic stones. This kind of harvest, Even large familia expeditions like Soma's couldn't gather this many stones and materials. And she had picked all of them up herself. Even without any commission. She now had enough to completely buy her freedom from the Soma familia. Just knowing she'd soon leave that life behind made her feel overwhelmed. She eagerly proposed, "Let's head to the guild now to exchange the stones for Velis. Then grab dinner somewhere. Let's eat something nice." Sure. They had cleared out the dungeon for the day, and Shirakawa was genuinely curious about their gains. As for the conversion to Velis, he left that to Lily. It would let the circle of avidity sink deeper. Once she experienced true financial freedom and the life she longed for. Then when despair struck. When her soul stood on the edge of ruin, completely consumed by desire. That's when Shirakawa would step in to help her. More importantly, since most guild employees knew he was a god, showing up with an unfamiliar familia to exchange magic stones would be suspicious. If he remembered right, the god overseeing the guild worked in the depths below. Shirakawa smiled and said, "You go handle the exchange. I'll wait at that restaurant up front to treat you for your hard work." Letting the supporter handle something as critical as exchanging magic stones? Was this guy really a rookie adventurer? He didn't even know something this basic. Lily stared at Shirakawa, who just let her go off like it was nothing. A dangerous thought crept into her mind. Should she just take the Velis? And leave Orario altogether? With a mix of nervousness and excitement, Lily carefully handed over the collected magic stones at the guild counter. The entire time, she kept glancing behind her. After confirming that Shirakawa hadn't shown up, under the guild staff's calm gaze, she pulled out 2 large bags of magic stones hidden deep in her pack. The thought of receiving a fortune in Velis made her feel a true sense of transgression. After inspecting the stones, the guild employee pushed over a drawer filled with gold coins and said in a surprised tone, "That totals 3.57 million Velis. Thank you." The price of the pure magic stones alone made Lily's breath quicken. Not to mention the monster materials she had also collected and sold. Her total earnings for the day exceeded 5 million Velis. With that, and the fortune she had saved, she only needed 1 million Velis to leave the Soma familia. That meant over 4 million would remain. She could leave Orario and live the rest of her life comfortably, never having to worry about money again. Should I just leave now? Well, it's that adventurer's fault for being so careless. He didn't even get a trustworthy supporter. What was I supposed to do? She stuffed all her Velis into her supporter's backpack. Just like always, Lily had made her decision in her heart. The key point was that there were simply too many adventurers in Orario. Even if she ran, it would be very difficult for anyone to find her. Besides, this entire haul was just from a single day Shirakawa spent in the dungeon. If he decided it wasn't worth chasing her down, then nothing would happen. Nervously, she arrived at the guild's entrance. Shirakawa wasn't in sight. Instant relief. She had 2 choices. Continue acting as a supporter while skimming off some of the magic stones and monster drops. Or take the lump sum and disappear from Orario entirely. After some thought, Lily made up her mind. Staying with Shirakawa risked exposure. Better to escape with the money and live the life she wanted. She pulled her gray hood over her head, avoiding the other adventurers around her as she hurried toward her rented house, heart racing. But she failed to notice that several Soma familia adventurers lurking in a corner had turned their attention toward her. So she made her choice after all. Through the emotion shared by the circle of avidity, Shirakawa wasn't surprised. The effect of this authority was simple. To let Lily earn, in a very short time, more money than she could make in a lifetime as a supporter. A taste of financial freedom. The emotional response was clear and immediate. Shirakawa arrived at the Hostess of Fertility Tavern. As his stats increased, so did his energy consumption. However, when he patted his pockets, all he found were a few palm-sized magic stones dropped by a minotaur. His expression turned odd. He hadn't brought any money. He glanced over to the busy woman behind the counter. Mia, the restaurant's manager. In reality, she was the former captain of the Freya Familia. A level 6 adventurer with a fierce temper. Shirakawa placed the magic stones on the counter and looked over to the tall, burly woman in the distance. He asked seriously, "Manager, I forgot to convert my stones to Velis. Can I use these directly to pay?" "Huh?" Mia looked over, her serious face glancing at Shirakawa and then focusing on the magic stone. As someone formerly of the Freya Familia, she was quite familiar with magic stones. One glance was enough to confirm its authenticity, but her tone remained stern. "That's fine, but our staff has to go exchange it. No change will be given." She set down her polishing cloth and added with her usual bold voice, "But I'll remember your face. If there's leftover credit, you can just order more." No problem. He'd only done a brief dungeon run. If he really needed money, he could just hunt a few monsters. Shirakawa looked at the menu. He casually ordered the day's special extra-large set meal, some specialty drinks, and a fried pork cutlet. That'll be enough. Looks like it's your first time here, but you've got good taste. That pork cutlet is one of our signature dishes. Mia passed the order ticket to the kitchen and didn't forget to tell Shirakawa, just wait a bit. It'll be right out. In the warm atmosphere of the hostess of fertility during the evening, with the food's taste being excellent and the staff all young girls, the place drew in many adventurers. Looking at the hearty dishes laid out in front of him, each portion especially large, Shirakawa began eating while casually glancing toward the far end of the restaurant. A girl in a green dress with a white apron bustled about. Her short gray hair hung neatly around her shoulders, and she looked quite cute. As for her identity, just one glance was enough for Shirakawa to recognize her, Seer Flover, the most popular maid at the hostess of fertility. More accurately, an actress. She should be called the goddess of beauty Freya. But Shirakawa had no intention of calling her out, instead quietly enjoying his meal. Noticing his gaze, Seer turned with a tray in her arms. Seeing an unfamiliar face, she smiled warmly. She approached and greeted him. I work here. You can just call me Seer. Is there anything I can help you with? No, the food is really good. Shirakawa had no real intention of interacting with Seer. Or with the goddess Freya controlling that body. Yes, he did have harem plans and had taken action toward them, but he wasn't completely indiscriminate. Thank you for your kind words. An unfamiliar face who paid with magic stones. She figured he must belong to another familia. Seer smiled softly. She tried using her eyes ability to see Shirakawa's soul. But what appeared before her was a chaotic, mixed void. There was no radiant soul at its core. Just a small incident during his meal. But soon, with a maid's guidance, the once noisy tavern fell quiet. It was the arrival of the goddess Loki and her familia. Her short red hair tied into a ponytail. Loki, with her ever-squinted eyes, entered followed by her familia. Two Amazonian women with dark skin and a flawless figure, a beastman, a Chianthrope, a dwarf, two elves, and finally, a golden-haired girl in an open-back dress, Eyes Wallenstein. No one dared gossip about them. As the strongest familia in Orario, speaking ill behind their backs was asking for trouble. Everyone, the expedition is over. Tonight, we party. Drink as much as you want. In contrast to the passionate and somewhat wild Loki, who had a particular fondness for beautiful girls, Eyes retained her usual cool demeanor. But when she picked up her glass and noticed Shirakawa in the corner, her eyes flickered with surprise. It left an impression. She'd met this adventurer earlier that day after the expedition. What caught her attention wasn't his clean appearance, but the weapon he carried. She hadn't gotten an answer to her question. And now they were meeting again. With her slightly airheaded personality, Eyes didn't realize how intrusive her curiosity might be. If anything could be called hesitation. In front of her fellow familia members, Eyes felt a little embarrassed to approach. Instead, she gave the eager Loki beside her a light smack on the head and began savoring the food they couldn't enjoy during their expedition. After a few drinks, the fierce and straightforward werewolf Bet, holding his mug, asked curiously, Eyes, you said that minotaur that escaped was easily taken care of by a passing adventurer, right? Yeah. According to Eyes, the monster was dealt with in under 5 seconds. And supposedly, that adventurer only had a supporter with him and went into the dungeon alone. Schneherut, with her slightly tanned skin, long flowing black hair, and a rainforest-inspired outfit, chimed in to help the quiet Eyes explain. Probably a level 4 adventurer from another familia. Bet didn't think too much of it. After all, someone had helped deal with a runaway monster. If anything felt off, it was that level 4 adventurers in Orario were usually already well known. They were likely commanders or captains within their familia. But the man Eyes encountered had gone into the dungeon with just a supporter. No team. That was strange. Still, Bet didn't dwell on it. Heading into the dungeon alone despite not being strong. He saw it as determination. He actually respected that a little. Eyes set down her knife and fork. Though she showed no change in expression, when she noticed Shirakawa getting up to leave the tavern, she couldn't suppress her curiosity any longer. She wanted to ask him directly, but she didn't even know his name. How could she start a conversation? Loki, who was always looking for chances to cling to beautiful girls, noticed the change in Eyes. Her brow furrowed slightly, sensing something unusual. In a casual tone, she asked, Eyes, do you know the guy who just left? Did she know him? Eyes Wallenstein wasn't sure. After all, she didn't even know his name. She calmly replied, just now. The adventurer you were all talking about. That was him. Meanwhile, after leaving the guild, Lily hadn't noticed that anyone was following her. As a supporter who had always been exploited, she lived in a run-down, out-of-the-way rental. The dark alley had no lighting at all. She relied entirely on memory to find her way back. For once, she wasn't burdened by a heavy heart. Today's huge earnings filled Lily with uncontainable excitement. Her plan: first leave the Soma Familia, then find time to sell the rest of the monster materials. With 5 million Valis in hand, she could finally leave this stinking, nightmarish city of Arario and start a new life. Something she never dared dream of before. And now, she'd made it real so easily. Just by acting as Shirakawa's supporter for a single day, she'd earned nearly 5 million Valis. Even her steps were light with joy. Maybe I could open a flower shop in a small town? Even if I don't have customers every day, with this money, I'll be totally fine. Sudden wealth had left Lily unsure how to even spend it. All she could think of was a flower shop to live out her days peacefully. The alley at night was poorly lit. But, fueled by her hopes for a better future, she had long since conquered her fear of the dark. However, what came next caught her completely off guard. From behind, her large supporter's backpack suddenly got kicked hard by someone. Being a small palom, Lily's frail body was sent flying several meters. Several heavy bags of Valis tumbled out of the pack. The sound of gold coins clattering echoed sweetly in the night. Did they find out? She didn't even have time to worry about the pain. Turning back, she saw several familiar figures holding lanterns. Her heart instantly stopped. Not them again. She could never forget those faces. These adventurers had robbed her before. And now, just when her dream life was within reach, they showed up once more. She tried to hide the bags of Valis behind her. As for the monster materials, she'd just give those up, whatever. But her subtle movements didn't escape the adventurer's notice. The leader grabbed her arm and tossed her several meters away. By the lantern's light, the adventurers clearly saw the gold in the bags, gleaming with dazzling brilliance. Whoa! There's got to be at least 3 million Valis in here. The leader clicked his tongue. A supporter like Lily couldn't have possibly earned this much. There was only one explanation: she stole it. He sneered. Wonder which adventurer ended up with a little thief like you. Don't worry. We'll hold on to this money for you. Just happens we're a bit short lately. The pain in her body was nothing compared to the heartbreak. Watching them walk away with her money, Lily's eyes went blank. If only she hadn't taken Shirakawa's money. Would things have turned out differently? Chapter 75, Tight Lily. Sakurajimamai comes to the Danmaki world through the authority of the Circle of Avidity. Lily's current thoughts were fully known to Shirakawa. Feeling the emptiness in her soul, he could basically guess what had happened. She'd gotten her massive fortune stolen, and with it, the hope of a better future. The purpose of this ability experiment was to use this unique method to gain a devoted chosen of pleasure. But if Lily's inner void was left unchecked, even her soul might completely collapse. That wasn't what he wanted. He wanted loyal followers. To grow his own familia within the Danmaki world. It would make recruiting future members easier, and Lily was very familiar with the dungeon. Even if other group chat members arrived in this world, she'd be a great help for what came next. Sensing the branded soul with the Circle of Avidity moving closer to him, and seeing there were few adventurers or pedestrians nearby, Shirakawa unleashed his strength, built from his powerful stats. In the dim lighting, his moonlit silhouette couldn't be seen by the naked eye. He reached the cluttered alley in no time, and what he saw were several adventurers opening Lily's green supporter bag. Damn. There's a ton of monster materials in here too. The adventurers were all holding bags filled with Valis, checking the various materials scattered on the ground. One of them gasped, "If we sell these, they're worth at least 1 million Valis. You little thief. You must have stolen some entire party's dungeon haul. With a move like that, you think you can still live in Orario? These are stolen goods. We'll just hold on to them for you. And if the original adventurers catch you, don't expect to live long." The leader's eyes gleamed with greed. He couldn't believe their haul was this good. He even eased up on the idea of beating Lily. They began packing up, dragging the oversized supporters' pack. None of them even glanced at the Palom girl sitting dazed against the wall. The sound of the bag scraping along the ground shredded Lily's dreams to pieces. And with it, the key to her personal vault. She couldn't even think about leaving the Soma Familia now. All her hard-earned money gone. Everything disappeared. Lily lifted her head in despair, casting a glance toward the gods who lived in the heavens, but even she couldn't help letting out a bitter laugh. After doing all that, wasn't this just her own karma? She was already numb to the pain in her body. Supporting herself against the wall, Lily struggled to stand. Her dreams and desires had been completely stripped away. She now felt like nothing more than an empty shell. Someone like me doesn't even deserve the gods' gaze, let alone salvation. Maybe death really is my only escape? As the thought surfaced in her mind, she looked at the adventurers walking away and suddenly realized death itself wasn't that terrifying. What was truly terrifying was dying without ever having fought back for anything meaningful. Clutching a loose stone from the corner of the wall, a faint smile appeared on Lily's young face. Even if resisting meant death, at least it would be a kind of liberation. But just as Lily made her decision, the adventurers ahead who had intended to leave suddenly stopped in their tracks. The leading one snapped angrily, trying to play hero? Better know your place. We've earned enough today, so get lost. I'll let it go just this once. They glared at Shirakawa, who had suddenly appeared before them. The leader of the group, who had just robbed Lily, showed a flash of wariness in his eyes. He hadn't even noticed when this guy had arrived. He tried to bluff using numbers to pressure Shirakawa into backing down. Hero? I wouldn't call it that. Adventurers at level 2 in the Danmachi world were nothing to Shirakawa. He casually summoned the scarlet-hued holy sword, all things of creation. He was holding the money pouch and a support bag filled with monster materials that the adventurers had been dragging behind them. None of this surprised him. What did catch his attention, though, was Lily, clutching a stone, ready to resist them. Shirakawa could have easily resolved the situation, but he figured there was more value in making this moment count. Seeing the scarlet blade in Shirakawa's hand, the adventurers exchanged glances. They knew this wouldn't end well. They hurried to draw their weapons. We're members of the Soma Familia. You'd better think. But Shirakawa didn't give him a chance to finish. Without even using his holy sword, he relied on raw physical strength. He kicked the leader in the stomach. Hard enough to send him flying over 10 meters and crashing heavily into the ground, bones shattering in the process. The excruciating pain made him wail in agony. The rest of the group, witnessing this one-sided beatdown, had no intention of fighting back. They just wanted to run. To reach the safety of the city streets. If we can just make it out of here. But Shirakawa wasn't going to let them escape. He snapped their arm and leg bones and then dragged them like dead dogs, tossing them off into the distance. The sudden change left Lily completely stunned. The adventurers who had exploited and tormented her so many times now lay defeated, powerless to resist. As that familiar figure approached, Lily stared at Shirakawa's face. The stone in her hand slipped to the ground. He was the adventurer she'd partied with today. So he'd found out she took the money and came to settle the score? She didn't plan to beg. Her expression calm, she simply asked, Shirakawa-sama, can I do one last thing? Of course. Shirakawa was curious what she would do. If she just begged for mercy, then he really would have no respect for her. She didn't even have a soul worthy of light. But with a resolve to die, Lily ignored the angry glares of the adventurers she used to fear. She walked over and retrieved a dagger from one of their bodies. Under the moonlight, the sharp dagger glinted coldly. Sensing death draw near, the previously arrogant leader couldn't ignore her anymore. Even through the pain, he shouted, "You! What are you doing?" Lily slashed their throats one by one, the dagger slicing through them with ease. The thick scent of blood filled the alley. She stood still. Watching the life drain from their bodies, her only emotion was relief. Nothing else. Still gripping the dagger, she turned to Shirakawa, her face calm. She had no intention of explaining herself. Maybe he would let her go now? But what was the point of living like this? She wiped the blood off the blade using her clothes, knowing it would hurt if she did it herself. Then she offered the dagger to Shirakawa with both hands. Death probably hurts a lot. Please. Help me end this quickly. Shirakawa hadn't expected that response. Staring into her serious eyes, he took the dagger in silence. Lily, realizing that death was near, slowly closed her eyes. Her eyelashes trembled faintly, betraying her calm facade. After all, who could truly welcome death with open arms? But the pain she expected never came. Instead, she felt a warm hand rest gently on her head. No scolding. No violence. Lily opened her eyes in confusion. Shirakawa smiled down at her. She asked softly. Why? You took about 5 million valis from me. Based on the average daily pay for a supporter, you'll need to work for around 50 years to pay it back. So, live. And work it off. Feeling that gentle gaze on her, Lily opened her mouth, but no words came out. In the end, she simply hugged Shirakawa. Her emotions had calmed beyond words. But her tears flowed like a broken dam. The will to live had started to grow again in her heart. Leaving the Soma Familia, becoming a supporter for Shirakawa. That would be her new reason to live. First, gather up all the valis and materials. With that much money, there's no reason to stay in a dump like this. You should find a better place to live. I remember you were part of the Soma Familia, right? Use this money to leave them. Shirakawa gently patted Lily's head. His tone was light. And then, join my familia. Become one of my chosen. Hearing those words, Lily looked up at him in disbelief. The warmth of his embrace still felt unreal. Had she really received God's salvation? She didn't ask why. Why this godhead came to Aurario in a mortal's body. Why he could reach the 15th floor of the dungeon with ease. Maybe there were things she simply hadn't noticed yet. All those monsters. Could that have been due to the recent abnormalities? The girl nodded firmly. Okay. In the name of the god of pleasure, live on in Aurario. From this day forward, you are no longer just a supporter. You are a chosen of the god of pleasure. Offer unto me your body, your spirit, and your undying faith. Without hesitation, Shirakawa activated the divine power granted to him by his godhood. He turned to Lily, who stood before him, still struggling to process the overwhelming rush of information. He imprinted the emblem representing the chosen of the god of pleasure onto the girl's smooth, pale skin. The supernatural effect instantly healed the injuries on Lily's body. Feeling the pain vanish, Lily lifted her shirt and looked at her stomach. A dark purple mark with a unique floral design glowed faintly, exuding a strange yet pure radiance. Chosen of the god of pleasure. She didn't fully understand what that title meant, but she could recall that final declaration, to offer up her body, her soul, and her unwavering faith. Lily wanted to stand on her toes. But being a Palam, even that wasn't enough. Her attempt to kiss Shirakawa fell short. Still, the emptiness in her heart was suddenly filled. She was willing to offer everything. Absolutely everything. Our familia has just been established in Aurario, and we don't have a base yet. You're familiar with the city, so I'll leave that to you. If we're short on Valis, I'll just go sweep through the dungeon for more monster drops. But you'll be the one exchanging them. They returned to the tiny apartment Lily had been renting. The space was cramped, but meticulously clean. Only the wall's window let in any air. A makeshift bed sat against the wall, and her supporter equipment was stacked neatly nearby. After washing up, Lily came out with her short red hair still damp, her petite frame wrapped in clean gray cloth. When it was just the two of them, Lily blushed and nodded shyly at Shirakawa's instructions. She glanced at him sitting at the edge of the bed with no other place to rest. She remembered what Shirakawa had said when she became the chosen of pleasure. Never having been physically close to a man, Lily nervously sat on the edge of the bed, then, clumsily but willingly, wrapped her arms around Shirakawa's neck. Leaning close to his ear, she spoke seriously, though her voice trembled. I want to give Shirakawa-sama everything. If someone were to ask Shirakawa how he would describe Palams, he might quote a famous line from an ancient essay in his past life, at first extremely narrow, only enough for one person. After walking several dozen steps, still just as narrow. It felt oddly fitting. Very different from his experience with Mary.